2연패로 인해서 지금 페이스가 굉장히 좋지 않은 T1의 맞대결이죠.
낭만 넘치는 게임을 언제나 하면서 화제가 되고 있지만
담원기아 그리고 아프리카에게 연패했거든요.
와 오너가! 야 오너!
아니 하나 더! 와 그냥 난리 났어요.
T1의 연승을 이어나갑니다.
폭풍 질주 파죽지세. 낭만을 넘어섭니다 이제.
그렇습니다.
리브 샌드박스가 결국 달려나갑니다. 계속 친다. 이제는 먹기에서 친다기 때문에 웃음이 멈추지가 않습니다.
와! 에버터!
T1
넥서스 깨면서
시즌.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the playoffs round 1, match 2. I'm Atlas, this is Chronicler, and man, the LCK, so extraordinarily spicy. Just coming off yesterday's victory for Nongshim. Congratulations to those guys. Afrika, I think, put up a little bit more of a showing, especially in that game 1. I think a lot of our Nongshim voters certainly felt themselves tensing a little bit after that first game, but our team that did hold the top spot in the LCK for summer certainly did come out on top in the end with a pretty great performance. Looking forward to seeing whether that means ㅣ2021 Kia will choose the team from today's match or Nongshim for their opponent in the next round.
I think that really depends on what we're going to see here today.
Yeah.
If you only saw game 1 yesterday, you might be, okay, you know, do you ever want to play against an Afrika that looks this dangerous? And again, the next couple of matches, it just kind of fell apart. So that's hopefully not what we're going to see here today, because that would make the choice for a ㅣ2021, I think, relatively easy.
Yeah.
And generally, avoiding ㅣ2021 is something that you want to try and do. So looking as strong as possible in this series is, for both these teams, not an easy achievement, but a necessary one for sure.
No, absolutely. Let's have a look at the playoffs bracket. We can bring that one up onto your screen here because there are some very interesting things to talk about. Because if ㅣ2021 Kia chooses Nongshim, then we have potentially, if T1's able to win today, the Gen.G versus T1 rematch in a best of 5, much like that semi-final of Spring, or Gen.G versus LIV Sandbox, the upstarts that were able to knock them off their pedestal in about week 7 of LCK Summer, which really did create a bit of a slump for the Gen.G squad. I imagine Gen.G's looking at either of these teams being like, okay, ㅣ2021, please pick one of these guys. That would be great. We're happy to try our luck up against Nongshim because, of course, that was a great series that we saw in our very final match of Summer. So much to think about, but this match itself, as we get into it, as we break it down, it's so extraordinarily interesting because this season, LIV Sandbox have just come out of nowhere and all of a sudden, they've got T1's number. They're 4-1 against this squad in games versus the team over this summer. Before that, guess how many games they'd won versus T1?
Very little.
0.
Yeah, that's very little.
Since spring 2020. Absolutely insane. I believe we've got some predictions, though, to bring up onto your screen. As let's see what Dongjun, Cloud Templar, and Kunkui said. LIV Sandbox 3-1s and 3-2s, with Dongjun with a 3-1 for T1. I'm also sitting on the 3-1 camp. Valdez, very brave. We have often spoken about 3-1 Andys. I panicked, and I was a bit of a 3-1 Andy here today. I apologize. Valdez and Wolf, they are very stalwart in their prediction, and you believe this one's going to be a close one.
I don't even know. Especially now with Teddy getting subbed in. Like I have, because that actually really changes the matchup as well. If it does what I think it should do, and I think that honestly, a complete 50-50 split, it would have been perfect because this one is impossible to call. I feel like with Nongshim and Afrika, yeah, Afrika had a really strong game, but that result never really came, I think, as a big surprise.
Yeah.
Nongshim also really growing in that series. With this one, I don't know.
No, it is very, very difficult to call. And if, to be perfectly honest, like if you became a fan of League of Legends and the LCK in summer of this season, you'd be like, in summer of this year, you'd be like, why isn't this all yellow? Come on. I mean, Liv Sandbox have looked great against T1 so far, but sometimes you do have to look towards the past in order to learn more. And as you can see, the fans do agree with that. 83%, obviously, T1, certainly, the fandom going to outweigh that of Liv Sandbox.
Yes.
So maybe there's a bit of voting from the heart going on here, but still, I mean, I think a lot of people, I mean, ourselves included, believe that T1 should be the favorites here, and it's not necessarily based on recent performance. It's based on how well this team plays in best of fives. You may have seen their last best of five up against Gen G. Guess what? That was the first best of five they'd lost domestically since 8 best of fives that they'd won. 8. So many. The last best of five that they lost, I think, was like 2 years prior to that up against KT or something like that. And that was actually one of our most hype best of fives that we've seen. Of course, internationally, things like that, it's a different story. However, domestically, this team is extraordinarily dominant. But let's bring up points of the match. Let's get into it, as T1 will face off against Liv Sandbox. We do have some surprises as well, based on the players that are going to be participating in today's best of five.
As even though the standings might not suggest it, with the nosedive that Liv Sandbox took at the end, I am still firmly in belief that this is a team that can, or in Sandbox rather, that can upset out of nowhere. But T1, when it comes to them firing on all cylinders, they look like one of the best teams in the LCK. And that is something that has been very hit or miss, and also why we should talk in more detail about the change that, of course, they have with Teddy coming in today. Because I think that for Liv Sandbox, that is a thing that is going to terrify you. Because even with Liv Sandbox looking as good as they did, the way that they won this last series against T1 was with this exact play.
And it was Effort wearing the Alistair skin of his opponent's colors as well. That one, I believe, belongs to Wolf. So certainly Effort earning the right to use that skin, though, after all of his time spent on SKT himself. Now, of course, T1. But as you can see in summer, as we were talking about before, 4-1 in favor of Liv Sandbox. A little bit closer towards the end of the season, which is where you were talking about. The slight slump towards the end of the season for this team. As Carrier versus Effort, I absolutely love this matchup. For me, these are the two best performing supports of this season.
For Carrier, I'm not going to argue with you, because why would I? That would make me look silly, because Carrier is it's without a doubt, I think, the strongest support we have in the
maybe even the strongest player that we have in the
you can make an argument for that, genuinely. I don't think he has any match. I think Effort is definitely top 3. I think it'd be between him and Callan. But Effort, I think, has been more important than Callan, because Effort's roams, and look at that, there we go.
Yeah, it doesn't spend a lot of time on the bottom side.
And it's something that is the main reason, in my opinion, why Liv Sandbox in the mid part of the season looked so dominant. Because I think later on teams got a little bit better at actually taking into account where Effort was, where did he go. But at the beginning, he won so many games single-handedly just by catching people off guard.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Let's have a look at this mid matchup. Victor versus Lucian is what we're going to be zooming in on here. But as we can see, the matchup, not too bad for Fate here, as you can see. I love that Fate is actually named after Twisted Fate, and probably because he saw Faker playing it. That's what I have in my mind, because of course, Faker probably the most famous Twisted Fate player since Messiah, and just really, really cool that there is sort of that.
You can say that for so many champions, though, Atlas, because we're looking
that's
at
true.
his rise, right?
And, and his Azir, and things like that. You know.
We can go on and on. And the Rise, I think, is going to be one of the most hotly contested picks today, because it is one of the things that allows T1 to play that extremely decisive, snowbally early game style that they've been so adept at. But it's also something that Liv Sandbox have used to great efficiency. That mid lane prio enables Owner and Croco, both very aggressive junglers, and if he's unlocked, Carrier, and regardless of whether or not he's unlocked Effort, because he's going to leave anyway, he doesn't really care.
Very much looking forward to how this one's going to go. But as we can see, playoffs roster here: Canna, Cuz, Faker, Teddy, Carrier, Zeus, Owner, Closer, Gumushi, and Hoyt. This isn't, of course, the roster that they're going to be fielding today. That is going to be a mixture of subs and, I guess, theoretically main roster players. Live Sandbox on the other side, Summit, Croco, Fate, Prince, Effort, with Howling and OnFleek still there sitting behind, but unlikely to see very much play. And this is the match record between the teams. This is what I was talking about. Going back to Spring 2020 Round 1, until this summer, Live Sandbox hadn't taken a game off T1 at any point. Zilch.
And it is a testament to both the development of Live Sandbox, how they perform in the current meta, as well as some of the troubles that T1 has run into. Because yeah, you can look at a lot of their stats that we saw in the previous video as well. Like, their gold stats are insane for T1. They're without a match within the LCK. But gold doesn't win you the game single-handedly. You need to do more than that. And that is where sometimes that falls us. You can look at some drafts, you can look at some clutch moments. And when it comes to clutch moments, I think that's where Live Sandbox, maybe not as much as Nongshim,
they steal games.
Yes,
they literally
they
do. I mean, Effort dives into Baron pits and takes things with a pulverize.
Yeah.
For goodness sake. That is not, I mean, for those playing at home, don't rely on that. That's not the way that you win an actual game. However, Effort decides to skew things just a little bit. But yeah, Live Sandbox just have a way of staying in a game when sometimes they may not necessarily deserve to. As first Dragon percent, Live Sandbox certainly winning there. As you can see, T1 have been so focused on breaking structures, getting heralds, and winning the game before the dragon becomes a factor. And I find it really, really interesting that it feels like, you know, Fred at Breon were the Dragon Slayers, and it has sort of become Live Sandbox that have decided that they want to kill a few more of those so far in round 2 of Summer anyway. And as we get into the playoffs, we'll see whether that continues. As you can see, Teddy back in the AD carry position, and I actually personally love this decision based on the matchup that we see here today. No changes for Live Sandbox, but I think that we should go into the addition of Teddy just a little bit here, because I love the adaptation, observing the fact that it's going to be Prince down there on the bottom side. And what happens? You've already spoken about it at length. Effort leaves him on his own. Prince is often on an island to fend for himself on the bottom side. And what does Teddy do? He turns gold into victory. That's what he does. When Teddy plays for the team, he does, on average, 31% of the team's damage.
And this gets augmented by the fact that both of these two teams, when it comes through players they play through, it's basically just top lane. Like, that's it, like both of them, that's it. And I think for T1, that is a strategy that I have often criticized, because in their case it feels like you have the options to play for other people. You have the best support in the entire game, just maybe see if he can pop off. But for Live Sandbox, they've shied away from it every now and then, but they're most strong is when Effort roams the top side, when Croco and Summit win those early 2v2s and then start snowballing the map. And I think that that top lane matchup is going to be so incredibly decisive, and that, as you say, means that the bot side should be relatively uneventful. And an uneventful bot side, I agree with you. I think that Guma had an okay split. I think his laning phase was decent, but his actual conversion of finding leads, which I think by the end of the split also became less oppressive than it was initially, was not as good as Teddy's has been historically, and also just in general. The one caveat is that when Teddy played, and this was on a different T1, this was without Owner, who I think has been instrumental in making them more aggressive, they did sometimes fall into the trap of not being proactive enough. But a T1 that plays proactive and has Teddy, that's terrifying.
Yeah, and I also think that Teddy isn't necessarily a driver. Does that make sense? Yeah. Like, Teddy is often a facilitator for his team. He will sit back, position perfectly for a team fight, but somebody else is going to start that team fight, right? It's not going to be him that does so most of the time, right? And you've got other AD carries that have different ideas about that, right? Like, Deft will throw every arrow he can possibly see in order to start a battle, but Teddy is not that. He's the guy that sits back and does his job, positions beautifully in team fights, and I think that now, like you say, with Owner, Teddy will be able to slot into this T1. However, it's all speculation, and I'm very much looking forward to what Teddy is going to look like after such a long holiday. And we have seen, here in the LCK especially, that if you go on a bit of a holiday, you come back powered up. You know, Ghost is an example of that. I think Rascal is a fantastic example of that very recently.
It is also a temporary buff. You know, it's one of those buffs that times out like after a game or 2, 3. So honestly, when it comes to that, T1, great timing on that one, because that should be enough to get you an edge up. But I think the terrifying thing about Liv Sandbox, and this is something that I am afraid about for T1, is that T1, in my opinion, are a team that when ahead is looking like one of the strongest, but their play from behind is also like it's such a switch in how they then move around the map, the plays that they go for or rather don't go for. Whereas Liv Sandbox, they might not have the cleanest individual plays every now and then. I think players like ㅣ they're very stable, but ㅣ is not someone that is going to 1v9 the game for you. You know, it's not like a BDD that finds a scatter 35 minutes in and just single-handedly wins you the game.
Yeah.
And that is something that comes from them coming together. And if Liv Sandbox is together with 5, they can still find those magical moments. And that is also where we turn our eyes to the draft, because I think that is a place where in the current meta, Liv Sandbox have maneuvered themselves better than T1 generally has. And that is something that as T1, doesn't matter how good your players are, if you set yourself up for narrow win conditions, which they have been known to do, it can be hard to clinch a victory regardless.
Certainly can. That being said, I think that T1's macro has only evolved over the season, and I'm looking forward to how they're going to be able to utilize it here as we hop into the draft for Game 1 of this best of 5. A final match of round 1 of the playoffs. The winner of this series will go on to face one of either Game1 Kia or Gen G, sitting there in round 2 waiting for their opposition to qualify. As Aurelia and Renekton taken away first here by T1, and the response being, of course, the Jace that has risen to permaban popularity, and the Lee Sin, I think, sitting at about that as well. Especially in the last week of the LCK, it felt like Lee Sin was unbeatable.
Yeah, he's insane. Not as strong as a Flex anymore, but that's okay if he's still one of the strongest junglers in the meta. Yeah, it can be picked in and with any
that's
composition.
A lot of respect.
Yeah, that's comfort for Croco, by the way. And now I wonder what the Rise is going to happen to the Rise, because you can also go for something like the Lucian, or you can allow T1 to have the Rise pick the Lucian into it, which is something that Liv Sandbox have done in the past. But T1 is enabled to such an extent by that pick, and even with things like the Viego, the Varus, the Diana, these other high priority picks open, I would not be surprised if we see that first pick or banned here. And I think it's a good call.
This is dangerous though, because it leaves the Lucian available without the Rise to pick into it, which we've seen be very, very popular. This could be dangerous, but we'll see where the T1's going to go for it. Of course, Faker really resorting to more of a facilitatory playstyle so far this season, and Lucian would not necessarily fit that mold. Certainly a very aggressive mid laner needing to really smash the priority in the early stages to make sure that it's as relevant as possible, as Viego will be locked in, likely an owner pick, but we've seen it, especially here in the LCK, still picked in the top lane.
Personally, a bigger fan of the jungle as well, considering the nerfs aimed at mitigating his lane sustain were largely successful. Yeah, that's no. That should be no surprise to anyone. It is a pick that is generally perma against Summit because of his impact on it. It is perfect in any Liv Sandbox style of draft. They do love drafts that, while they can team fight until later, you know, we see some Ezreals, some scaling elements to it. They love being able to fight as soon as they hit level 6, and the Gnar enables that. And also, it's the go-to pick for Kana. As soon as the Jace is gone, then they go for Gnar. That's the list that traditionally T1 goes for. And yeah, that's a Liv Sandbox draft.
Looking like it. No surprises on this side either, Chronicler. I think you're absolutely right with the predictability here. Kind of expecting a Kennen and then throw the Viego into the jungle. We'll see what actually happens. I mean, something like Kennen Leona would look pretty good here, as the Kenny will be locked away.
It's a staple.
Oh, Fake is bringing it to them early here, as his Azir will be dusted off and brought into the mid lane. We'll see what Fate decides to do. This feels like a bit of a blocker towards something like the Twisted Fate, where Azir can have a very good laning phase into the champion.
And the other thing that it does is that even if the Sandbox want to go for a Syndra, a Lucian, these more aggressive prio-based mid laners, into Azir Kennen, Syndra's okay, but it doesn't feel nearly as good, right? Still going to go with it regardless, and considering...
Certainly a very Fate thing to do.
Yeah, considering Sandbox's playstyle, I think it also makes a lot of sense. It is a pick that will allow Croco to play more aggressively, especially post-6. But I do like the draft from T1 here early on. I think that with the Nod Diana, you're going to be relegated to guaranteed going in, you know? This comp, even, especially with the Lucian as well, is very limited range thus far. And even with something like an Ezreal, which would be very, if it doesn't get banned, very on point for Liv Sandbox, it doesn't really alleviate those issues. And with Kennen and Azir, you're like, yep, Cannon Zir Viego, you can dive into it. That's okay. We don't really mind. So I'm liking this. Also, the Fido's been a really good one because it would make this comp even more disgusting from T1.
Oh, I like that one as well. The Ezreal going to be taken away from Prince. Pretty quintessential ban here, as Liv Sandbox will have priority on that next pick. It will be likely the AD carry will be locked in by Liv Sandbox, with Effort being able to grab that counter pick for whatever T1 decides to bring out. Kalista still looking pretty hot here, this particular point, and we'll see whether that one gets banned away, as Varus is also another one. It's had a lot of priority, of course, with the beginning of the draft having zero attention on the AD carry pool, means that now is where all of that does have to come into play. If it is, say, you know, the Kalista doesn't get banned away, and then Liv Sandbox lock it in instantly, a Jinx Thresh becomes very scary.
I think you just lock Ashe as Sandbox, because it also locks Teddy.
Yeah, true.
It locks Teddy out, right? And
Ooh,
yeah,
Thresh, okay.
Ooh. And that makes it even worse, right? Because, okay, I actually would have.
Well, now you get Ashe Braum, and it's easy as.
Yeah. And this is something that is quintessentially Liv Sandbox, right? You mentioned it with the Fate pick. No shocker there.
Okay.
Playing more aggressive, which I honestly like. I think that the Braum is insane into the Liv Sandbox comp. Short range, a lot of skills that you can block and whatnot. But Leona does give you more agency, and Teddy with agency is something that, or sorry, Carrier with agency rather, is something that I think we all love to see in the LCK.
I'd agree.
Now, Galio, definitely a nice one here. But I gotta say,
I think the Cow fits, especially for a game #1, right? Put Effort onto one of his most comfortable champions. We saw how powerful it was as well yesterday. I think that with compositions that have a lot of front-loaded damage, and when you've got things like Emperor's Divide and, of course, the Slicing Maelstrom that are going to be coming in, which is where T1 wants to do most of their work, if Effort can try and eat most of that, utilizing his Unbreakable Will certainly can be a way to make things work, especially when he has the added safety of the Kalista.
It's also the mental edge, Atlas. This
yeah.
Cow stole your Baron, and now he's back.
Let's hope that he actually takes Spellbook this time so that he can properly be relied upon to steal Barons. I think that's very important.
I like it. The tech angle.
Yep.
To strike the fear in the heart of T1. Don't think we're actually going to see that.
Yeah.
I've got to be honest, you know, I gave it some thought.
There was a time where we saw supports taking the Unsealed Spellbook, but it is not this day. As we're going to have a look at the teamfight composition here from T1. So much setup CC, as well as all of that damage that will be provided by the Azir and the Kennen mostly, but Viego and Ashe also going to be very dangerous, especially if they get going. And here we've got a pretty sandboxy dive composition that I think all of us have become very used to.
It's no shocker at all. And both these teams going into, honestly, their preferred style, I think. If anything, T1's comp is a little less early aggro than we've seen them draft recently, which I honestly love. I think that it's been something that T1 has been opting into a little bit too readily, and I think that this composition, while still providing you with avenues in the mid-game, Leona Ashe can obviously lock down targets very well. You can snowball objective fights with a Viego with a single good cannon ult, and the setup is there. When you add Faker in as well. But there's still ample scaling, right? And yeah, I don't love playing Kalista.
This is not great. As Teddy, of course, with a Frost Shot, going to be very happy. Even manages to get the ward down. There's the flash. The follow flash comes through, and Teddy, welcome back to the main roster. First blood solo kill. Finds him, and there's just nowhere to walk.
Gonna let that one sink in. That's not what you want. That is,
unless you're a T1 fan, in which case you're pretty psyched about the whole situation.
No, as a T1 fan, that's great, and as Teddy, that is something you're going to be extraordinarily happy about. But it's also something that obviously, like, that should never ever be allowed to happen.
Absolutely.
And I was about to go into, you know, on an even footing, why is the Kalista such a nuisance, or the Ashe rather such a nuisance to the Kalista as...
이거 쭉 가도 되나 이거? 쭉 가도 되나? 이거 무빙조 해줘. 이거 무빙조 해줘. 무빙조 해줘. 땄어 이거 땄어 이거 땄어. 나이스. 네이스. 예, 캐리. 나 이거 롱토드랑 핑하 할 수 있다.
You guys heard that one. You just said, yeah, carry.
It's Ash level 1. It's one of the strongest.
All right, there's an exhaust.
Oh my god.
There's no cleanse for Teddy, so he couldn't do that, much like Prince did. However, that is 2 summoner spells. And yeah, like you were saying, Ash level 1 plus an extra longsword. Oh dear.
No, it's especially in 2 and Alistair, that isn't a champion level 1, right? Like, and yeah, Leona prefers having level 2 as well, but Ash is so powerful in that early level with volley and a frost shot that normally this is a rough lane to play out. But when you're behind this early on, when Prince is forced to use all his summoners that early, flashes, still gets killed, it is just a disastrous start. And this comes to mind considering the fact that Prince is also a player that we know to be emotional, right? He played against T1 in their first, in round 1, got emotional afterwards, and it's understandable considering the drive that we've seen this player exhibit ever since he came in very late in round 1. Or rather in spring.
Yep.
And to start off like this is also, as you pointed, it's a warm welcome. It's like, welcome back, Teddy. You get a free longsword for your lane, and this lane is oppressive enough as is, and Croco's pathing away, right? Because what you gonna do? You're a Diana pre-6, you just don't have that much pressure available. If there is a counter gank, you're in even deeper trouble.
Yeah, and it was level 1 Alistair that was trying to help, and you know, definitely not the most powerful level 1 champion in the game, and Keria had already found exactly where he was. The setup was pretty nice there from T1. Not going to net them too much of an advantage just yet, but you can already feel the effects of just how much more powerful Teddy has become. Even Faker just completely zoning Fate away, actually laning very nicely here, taking off half of his health bar in exchange for 0 of his own. And that is going to be Rift Scuttler taken on the bottom side by the bottom lane of T1, and Ona did secure the top side one. So Diana not being able to extend her lead as Ona looking for a bit of a dive here onto Summit. Only half a Naba. This is going to be dangerous. Puts down the mist, and Summit does flash away. So flash comes through, and T1 didn't have to invest anything other than the position of their jungler.
You get the wave of Summit, but being down a summoner is going to make you very susceptible to games later on when Kana has his ultimate available, either through roams or through just Kana's pressure. Considering that in Minina you are just kind of a sitting duck, so there as well, the boomerang not hitting Summit, not having enough power available to get into that mega early on. And I was a little bit worried, you know, I saw the Teddy swap, and I don't think that this is, again, something that I've talked about a lot. It's not because a team plays a specific way with a player that you can blame the player for the playstyle. But I was really happy to see T1 play very proactive. And Teddy got first blood a minute and a half in, not even, a minute in. And they've already dove topside, and we're 5 minutes in. So T1, clearly, not slowing down, rather, and then as Live Sandbox, that is something that you're going to have to adequately deal with, and Effort is attempting to do so. But as pointed out, teams have caught on a little bit more.
No, it's exactly right. I think that there's no surprise that he's hanging around here and is going to be spotted as Faker just going to dive towards Fate there with his shifting sands. Does end up evening out the trade before he decides to get to work on these minions. Should be absolutely fine for both of these mid laners. Corrupting Potion eating through for both of them. 1 charge remaining on either side. There's Keria making his way through. Effort hot on his heels. Keria just going to deliver some health and collect some money for himself. And Live Sandbox are just going to back away into the fog of war. Croco is up here towards the top side. Maybe not the opportune time for Kana to make his way in, but he does have a ward just south of him. So he should be okay. Actually kiting around the other side as there's the slicing Maelstrom. Summit in so much trouble. The Nabar's almost up, but he needs one more auto. And now Croco getting chased down. This cannon is so powerful. Mark of the Storm's going to work out as Faker not going to go for the ult. As Ona now diving on forward, Fate is going to get stunned up, but is going to be able to push them away as Summit going to get some flashes, but doesn't invest the ulti himself. Some very low health bars on both sides. But no one to go down just yet is now Teddy chasing Effort. Level 5 for the Ashe doesn't quite have the Enchanted Crystal Arrow just yet.
And key thing, there is no Moonfall available. If Croco has that ultimate, that fight can get turned around very, very quickly. Appropriate response from both teams, immediately calling for reinforcements. And if Summit was in a little bit of a better spot in that lane, then you might be able to actually keep Kana in a little bit longer. And then that counter gang or the gank rather might work. Nice response by Owner as well. And it ties into what we've been expecting. No attention paid to the bot lane at all from either jungler. It's about the top lane, trying to get either Summit or Kana ahead.
Yeah, and I think both of these players require a lot of attention on both sides. I think Summit, not necessarily for anything to do with this play, I think he is a very oppressive top laner just in general, but if you have Summit with a very good game to start things off, generally you're feeling pretty good, because you mentioned emotional players. Summit's certainly one of those and can play with momentum very effectively. But we've seen Kana, when he does have that jungle support, he can also utilize advantages very, very well. But often his weak side has drawn a little bit of criticism, one could say.
And it's something that has been improving, I think, over the last couple of weeks. Kana has looked better and better. Still, I don't think not anywhere near the performance of players that we've seen, like Khan comes to mind. Keen, even though, obviously, having some lesser moments yesterday, but large and about still one of the main carries for that Afrika roster. But at the same time, especially when Kana is on comfort, and this Kennen now clearly added to that list as well, he has shown how to handle himself in team fights, and this is a setup that is being looked for 5 versus 5.
Yeah, all of Liv Sandbox still waiting on the wings, but the eye's going to get poked of Shelly, and she's down very low already. Croco pretty far away from this one. Moonfall in hand. There's the smite. As Keria going to move on forward. The arrow will connect, and there's no... Oh my goodness! Into the backline goes the cannon. The lightning is cutting them down. The Emperor's Divide's beautiful. The Wombo combo, amazing from T1, as Fate will have to flash away. Summit in trouble as well, and the flashes to follow Fate will mean that he can't get out, and Teddy claims another.
And that's a disastrous turn for Liv Sandbox, and honestly, a beautiful play by Kana. And this goes back to... Faker?
Yeah, Faker in trouble here as Summit looking to try and lock him down. He will be able to do so. So, Summit getting some revenge here on the Emperor of Shurima on the top side.
Oh, Croco.
Yeah, okay. Let's be a little bit careful here. We remember how the first game of our previous series went.
Yes. Yeah, as you pointed out, no need to get overexcited, but this is really nice considering T1, the match that they lost, with a same fight like this against Hanwha, where the flank wasn't enough, right? Where Kana couldn't find the angle. But here, it's beautiful. You know, the setup is great. He flashes over the wall, sets it up for the rest of his team. Again, Teddy clearly showing that he has come to play the video game. Hasn't in a while.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's been taking a holiday and clearly feeling very refreshed as. Yeah, just not respecting Summit's nah. This is what you get as Faker. Nice cancel there by Summit as well. Gets him mid shuffle. And it's not something that is going to turn a disastrous play into something less disastrous. It's okay. You know, it's nice. It makes you feel a little bit less bad, but a Teddy that is already this fed. Also, we didn't really get into this, but this T1 composition, I think, can also run into a pretty strong mid-game lull if they don't find early pressure. Because while Kana's burst is nice and Faker later in the game will do a lot of damage, the Ashe is not known for providing a lot of damage, right? We see a lot of jokes about it, and I think that while the shield bow builds, especially in a situation like this, are going to feel so oppressive, because Teddy's going to hit that and he's not going to die. But I assure you, he will do damage because he's so far ahead of the curve.
Yeah, this is the thing. I feel like Ashe is... She's become sort of this meta's Caitlyn, if that makes sense, you know? Hits that trough, but if you do just get ridiculously ahead in the early game, like, it doesn't matter which champion you are, right? If you've got an auto attack and a big bunch of items, you're going to feel absolutely fantastic regardless. So certainly mitigating a whole lot of those trough effects, if you will. 3-0-2, 100% kill contribution, definitely very, very scary. And T1 going to take the first Drake as well as the tempo advantage. I mean, they've kept it since the level 1, and even though Faker gets killed on the top side of the map, it hasn't really altered the game state in one bit. As now Effort chasing after, does get the flash forward as there's the moonfall from Croco. Teddy going down very, very low as Faker is in position. Teddy still alive for now as the culling comes through, but Fate can't walk through the wall, and Teddy, he's out of there. Now the rest of T1 trying to survive. Emperor's Divide not necessarily working fantastically, but Effort will eventually go down. And Teddy, he's still alive somehow, wandering up through the forest, as now Canna trying to get out of this one. He is going to get smashed down there by Summit with the wallop as Owner is going to flash after him. There's the stun, there's the kill, and the possession will come through afterwards, and Owner gets revenge.
And it's a nice attempt at Live Sandbox. I get what they want to do, try and retake control of this map, right? And this is exactly the type of explosive gameplay that we've grown to love this team. However, it doesn't work because T1 is more than ready for it, right? And it's something that Live Sandbox have relied on for this entire split. But the fact that Teddy gets away there is so big, it means that Prince doesn't get his rent resets, isn't able to get a lot more done, his effort is...
Oh dear. Yeah, Effort could be in trouble here. Doesn't have his Unbreakable Will. There's the exhaust. They do back away. Teddy actually getting out of there. Will give the kill over to Owner potentially, but no, Effort is just given a way out. Nope, the stun comes through, and he is going to die. I find it interesting that Teddy's like, no, there's a minion wave, everyone. I'm going to place down the Rift Herald, and we're going to grab this turret and a bunch of extra plate gold. They do exactly that. Fate and Croco should be able to clear out the wave. Faker taking some plates here on the bottom side, though, and T1, it feels like they just have an extra champion in this game.
It's insane. And it's something that I think T1 has done better than any team, barring maybe them one. They're so good at not only making plays themselves around the map, but also baiting their opponent into making plays when they're strong, right? The reason why you just see Teddy go like, okay, they got him, they got the Alistair, I don't care, I can walk up to mid lane, is because he's so incredibly powerful at this point in time, and he just wants to shove, right?
Yeah.
And while this is happening, Faker's also doing the same thing, and you can see that they're aware that this is happening. When they see Effort run in for as long as he does, they know he's coming. Croco dies relatively quickly in that fight. Prince not able to actually find Teddy, and then you just have a bunch of low health bars. Fate doesn't have the effective range, throws his calling, which is nice, but doesn't get enough done. And again, Summit trying his very best to salvage a tough situation, picks up a kill, but then goes down himself as well. And this is also the type of situations where a Viego gets so much value. It's not even like it's Owner winning these fights.
No.
But you know that the moment someone on your team dies, winning them becomes almost impossible.
This is where a win more champion like Viego looks really broken.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, you win more, right? And they're already in such a great position, and Viego will only help solidify that. As T1 looking to try and steal away a red buff. Looks like they will be able to, especially with all the vision that they have available. Carrier moving down to get rid of this one. Control ward comes on through, and Owner is going to smite that one away. So Croco, once again, getting starved out. And how many times do you see, you know, a mid-game Diana not having very much farm? It's in games like this, where things can be very difficult from the beginning. That is certainly not going to bode well here for Live Sandbox, as Shirley also going to get taken down. The T1 monopoly on neutral objectives will continue.
And I think that while that's rubbing a little bit of salt in the wounds, this is an appropriate punish to come through for Live Sandbox. Picking the Kalista, knowing the Ashe is open, yes, it's great comfort for Prince. Yes, you've had some great moments on it. But one, you know that this is a counter pick that is just incredibly strong on so many levels. You outrange, the slow is just a nuisance to play into the Kalista, especially when combined with an exhaust from carrier as well. You barely get to play the game. And then Prince also gets killed level 1. You know, there's more pressure that they can reliably deal with on the entirety of the map regardless. And for Live Sandbox, I think from this point you're 4k behind. You're going to lose the next Drake as well. No way with the spikes that you want to hit that you're going to be able to contest. You're looking at maybe a third one or some random catch in between fights. But outside of that, T1 is just saying, well, look what we got. What do you have? And the answer is Prince doesn't even have a mythic.
Yeah.
So I don't think you can fight here. You might try a Sandbox and you still have your wombo cop because it is Sandbox after all.
Yep, welcome to give it a crack. And to be perfectly honest, it's not the thing. It's not like things get better as the game goes on. You know, it's not like Live Sandbox is going to have an out as far as scaling or something like that. It's like, yes, you know, the dive will still be possible later in the game, but if you don't have the damage to back it up, you'll never blow up any of the members of T1, and then they'll just roll over the top of you. Because if you dive on top of Ken and Azir, I mean, what do you expect to happen?
Yeah, when they're fed, it's hard enough as is. And if you have a lead, then you can legit 100-0 them in your initial combo, and that never really becomes a problem. And that is something that could have happened to T1, right? Had Liv Sandbox not fallen behind as early and as much as they did. I think that this come from Liv Sandbox can snowball incredibly well. There's so many ways to play very aggressively forward, and even at minor leads, you should still be fine. As is a nice cleanse there from Prince, but like, what does it get you? And unfortunately, the answer is nothing. It's just a lost summoner.
Well, maybe an arrow to the face, because now without that cleanse, it's going to be very difficult for Prince to survive. Is Shirley going to make a visit here to the mid lane? 17 minutes onto the clock. This should be this turret falling down pretty comfortably, as Owner is just going to continue eradicating Croco's jungle of anything that can give Croco money. As the arrow, not going to connect there. Croco going to be able to use his dash cannon to get himself out of the way. Shirley gets another charge. Zoning arrow to come through there, I guess you could say. As this tower, not long for the world, as they are just going to stick around and take that one down. So 2 turrets very swiftly here for T1, and the gold is only ballooning further, close to a 6,000 gold lead before 20 minutes into this game.
If your aim is wide enough, every arrow is a zoning arrow, you know? You just gotta broaden your perspective. And that one, we joke about it, but it did actually create some space, make sure that Shelly got the charge in. And the issue that you have now as Liv Sandbox is you've lost every semblance of map control, and you can always talk about the dream combo. All right, effort goes in, he finds 3-man knock-up, and then Diana follows up with a moonfall, Summit smash him. And that's nice, but if you have full vision, which T1 honestly should have in the current game state, that's very unlikely to happen. And even if you start by Baron as T1, which I think they can, they don't actually need to take the Baron. They just need to force Liv Sandbox to come into them. There's 6k gold and 2 Drakes up. You just force them to walk into you, and then either they try, you're aware, and then you have all your ultimates ready, right? A defensive slicing Maelstrom, Faker with a shuffle to split up the fight. Teddy is almost has a wit's end as well, and he is both a summoners, so that's horrible. Or you just re-engage on them, because your engage is also insane.
Well, now, Teddy very close to having his ult back up. Carrier's got his, lands it pretty nicely there onto Prince. Now the counter engage to come through as Carrier suffers only half of his health bar, but decides he wants to go back in again. Flashes away, Prince is going to keep himself alive as Teddy off to the side will get Fate's called for the knock-up. The arrow is going to connect, but it's onto Effort, who had his ulti, but I think the T1's wallets are just a little bit too heavy, as into the backline goes Canna and eviscerates the members of Liv Sandbox, still here standing, as Effort now just trying to clop his way towards the top side of the map, and Summit wasn't even here.
That's not okay, Oni. You can't both have Diana and Viego. That's not allowed.
Yeah.
And by the end of the fight, it doesn't even matter anymore, and my hat's off, because this game from Teddy it's insane. Like,
this is a big welcome back, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's one thing to come in your you know, your re-entree game and do okay. Like, maybe you win lane, you get a 20 CS lead, you're like, okay, you know, T1 looking good, they're still playing the map, it's all. But no, that's not what is happening here. This is Teddy systematically gapping the bot lane, starting at literally level 1, and then look here as well, right? Because this is their bot lane just setting up. Like, this 3-man unit is showing exactly that. What I was afraid of for T1 in this game 1, not happening. Teddy, he doesn't care. He's healing forward aggressively into 4 people, Atlas.
No, he was avoiding the culling by moving towards Fate and shooting him. Worked out pretty well.
Just murdered him.
I know, it's ridiculous.
And then,
분들
yeah.
Let's have a look at Owner one
빨리
more
볼게
time.
할래. 다이애나 볼만해? 잡았어.
Just like that, by the way, everyone.
That's not okay. So in case you missed it, what happened? Like, not only he got Croco, which is fine, but then he used Moonfall or QE on the minion wave, and then he also had Croco's Proto Belt, because why not? That's a thing the champion does.
Yeah, that's the thing you can do. You can dash cannon yourself if they bought one. You steal all their stuff as well as their buttons. It's not very fair.
And of course, the absurd thing about this game is that it doesn't really matter which jungler you have there, right? Because that fight was won before that. It is, again, the decisiveness from T1, something that they've shown a lot of games, but they've also lacked, especially at the beginning of the split when they were playing with Teddy. But none of that is to be found here. And for Liv Sandbox, I think mentally this game, you're already checked out. You're thinking about the next one. How can we maybe change up our draft, because that is something that, especially in the best of 5, even more so than in the best of 3 scenario, needs to happen. You can't draft this same type of comp.
Oh, Arrow will connect there onto Fate. There's the chain CC and an extraordinarily dead Lucian, and now Owner has decided that he wants to be the champion. Prince going to be taken down as well. The possessions will continue. It's a possession procession here in the mid lane as T1 will move over to the Baron. As T1, I apologize for that. That was not great. Starting off strong here, Chronicler, don't you worry, as the Baron is now going to be under fire. T1 wanting to use this to finish off the game.
I was going to give you some positive feedback. I actually loved it, but you didn't even give me the opportunity. You had to take that away from me, like this Baron is getting taken away from Liv Sandbox. T1 take everything. And there's scenarios where trading a Dragon for Baron, rather, for a Drake is not worth it. When it's Soul Point, you know, it's kind of that gray area. When it's Drake #1 for your opponent...
Oh yeah, who cares?
Easy peasy.
Feeling very good about that one. Teddy from the Fog of War. No way for Fate to avoid that. And this is just what Viego does when he's fed, right? Like, oh man. Very dangerous. His effort, you know, from the dead Callista is going to make his great escape with the Fate's Call. But now it's a Baron that's encircling T1. And they will look to break open the base here once again. They have taken down the mid lane inhibitor turret. They did not take the inhibitor. But now they should be able to crush whichever structure they decide to take.
And as mentioned previously, especially when the sums are up, T1 can afford to move in this far because they have so many anti-dive tools. I say as carrier is about to face check, knowing full well that everyone is there. Because he had the scanner up. But look at this control. There is no opportunity for a flank from Summit, you know, like a Mega Gnaw opportunity. Everything that you try to do here as Liv Sandbox will be telegraphed, and that makes it so much harder to find these type of clutch, we need to get a miracle, we're 10k gold town type of plays. And it's something like, if T1 doesn't allow it to happen, which currently they're clearly not.
Oh, look at Faker here just holding this siege minion in Baron form, just smacking down that turret, and that pressure will not abate. I love that T1 just cheating between the top and mid turrets, or top and mid lanes, to make sure that Liv Sandbox will always be spread too thin, and they will always have the inside track to get towards these areas. It's a really great play. The arrow is going to fly majestically towards the Nexus. Unfortunately, you don't do damage to the Nexus with your arrow, just soaring through past its turrets. But I liked the attempt. Here's a flash forward, though. Not going to find the stun. His owner's going to get headbutted out of there. Carrier now possibly in trouble as the Emperor's Divide lands onto so many. And into the back line goes Canna Summit, looking for Teddy, but now he has to get out of the way. Teddy flashes after him. The wallop comes through, but Teddy, oh, he's going to fall in the end. Avoids the boulder, but can't avoid the massive auto attacks here of the Gnaw. Meanwhile, the rest of T1 will mop the floor with Liv Sandbox. So it was all a cunning ruse in the end. And now, with this Baron buff and multiple siege minions, they're looking to try and break these Nexus turrets. It's only Summit and Croco left available. No Moonfall, no Gnaw available either. It looks like it is just going to be both of the Nexus turrets and T1 backing away.
Well, Teddy makes his first mistake of the game. It prevents them from ending. It shouldn't have a bigger impact on this game as a whole. But yeah, if you have Ashe there, I can assure you that end is very much within reach. Taking on Summit there, very successful endeavor. Flashing after him over the wall, probably not quite the right call, but I think...
Sometimes you're just feeling it, Chronicler. You know, you had those moments before where you're just feeling it. I'm feeling the flash into melee range against Mega Gnaw as Ashe. This is going to be the best move. But this follow-up, this answer to all of the pressure that was put onto Carrier, really beautifully done, as Owner just happily underneath some Nexus turrets. Meanwhile, this was a little bit of an issue.
It's not going to prevent me from voting for POG for it, but it should, because you should not do this, Teddy, and he knows.
They'd won the game prior, so I guess maybe this isn't as important, but I agree with you. This was a big whoopsie. He just wandered into the scoop and said, yeah, I'm happy to tank all of the damage, and you're just not going to be able to do enough to me. But as it turned out, Summit was capable of doing enough.
It's not going to matter, and as a Liv Sandbox fan, at least Summit played well. That's about as much as you can take away from this, because outside of that, this has just been a straight-up outclassing in this first game from T1. And it's early, it's just everything. The early control, the fights, the skirmishes, the reads on Liv Sandbox.
I think like the Ashe lane into Callista is already way too hard for Callista, but if you give your opponent an early longsword by dying against your opposition,
And having no
it
flash.
skews the game so extraordinarily far, as now we're going to have possibly the final fight. As there's the Emperor's Divide to get rid of Effort. He's thrown away Fate's Call. Will keep him alive, but it's not going to work out for Croco, as Canna with his slicing Maelstrom moving towards him doesn't really do too much with it. However, stops anyone from being able to attack T1. There is no defense for this Nexus, and T1 will obliterate Live Sandbox in game 1 of this best of 5.
We even see the flex there, the Sandbox logo coming out, and welcome back, Teddy.
Yeah, that was a way to come back. Wow, unbelievable performance, but also just I think the entirety of T1 playing extraordinarily well. I wouldn't be surprised if it was Owner that picked up the player of the game for this one,
either. No.
as his Viego was also absolutely fantastic. And I love it when a team first picks a champion and then that champion is the outstanding one, because that really shows merit to their draft, right? We know that if we have this champ, we're going to absolutely roll over our opposition, and they absolutely did that. As the Ashley owner as the follow-up picks was also fantastic. But certainly Live Sandbox, some things to work on, you know, blind picking the Callista into an Ashe that's open after banning away so many 80 carries during the last phase. Maybe an Ashe could have been one of them.
Even that, like, it was right there. You just pick the Ashe. Ashe does well into basically anything that was open still. Teddy can't go for Callista or he will suffer the same fate. And yeah, you can see the faces for Live Sandbox, and it's a team that already went emotionally through a hard time, right? They had a shot at making it to the very top.
Yeah.
They had round 2 of the playoffs within their grasp, and to go from that to drop to 5th, that's one thing, but to then get pummeled like this in the first game is something that you're gonna have need a great amount of mental fortitude to bounce back from. And I think that it starts with the draft. I honestly think that that top half, it can be hard to play out, but it's not impossible. But the moment that Callista locked in and you saw the Ashley owner, you knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, and also the way that Croco was suffocated out of so many resources as well. I think the bottom lane having the lead that it did meant that they were able to just walk up the river, collect the Rift Scuttler. That's so much more money that Croco didn't have access to. Like, look at this. This is just absurd. The lead that Teddy had. I want to see the damage difference. Maybe if he gets POG, we'll be able to see the damage difference between himself and Prince, because it's over 3 times that of what Prince was able to put out. But to be perfectly honest, after the blunder in the early game, it was just downhill, and it was pretty academic, to be honest, from T1, who just kept such a firm stranglehold on the game.
But it's not a given that an early kill turns into such a big lead. Kosterman back to Doran, got a double kill very early on in an important KT series, didn't get anything done, and now Teddy picks 1 kill up, basically by himself, and then takes away the game like this. That's terrifying.
It certainly is. Let's see whether they can do it moving towards a game number 2. Remember, this is a best of 5 series and anything can happen, and we'll find out what happens in game number 2 right after the break.
이제.
풀렸고.
왜 들어가자.
바로 배가 풀렸고.
다이나 마크 중이야.
괜찮아. 빨리 들어왔고 괜찮아.
다이나 볼게. 다이나.
왼쪽 이겼어. 왼쪽 이겼어.
나 살았어. 와줘.
가운데 앞으로 가운데.
보고 힘들어.
먹어.
타워 가자.
야 타고.
나 잡을 수 있나?
야 끝내지 봐봐.
나 잡을 수 있나?
야씨 나 왜 이렇게 잘하냐?
아 미안한데 1레벨.
오케이 여기까지.
나 잡을 수 있나?
확인.
보고.
다음 판 잘하고.
야야야.
여기 깨줘. 굿. 나이스.
빗발. 감독님 불
네,
꺼주세요.
감독님 불 좀.
나이스. 할 수 있어. 레벨업. 네, 안녕하세요. 배우 조연입니다. 하지만 오늘은 일반인 원딜 유저 대표 조연으로 나왔는데요. 너무 떨리네요.
네. 이제 제가 인사하면 되겠죠?
네.
안녕하세요. 저는 LCK에서 분석가 및 해설로 활동하고 있는 고릴라 강범현이고요. 오늘 이렇게 조연님과 함께
네.
LCK 샵 리뷰를 한번 하러 왔습니다.
와!
이제 LCK 레전드 마우스입니다. 일단 무조건 컨셉이 가벼워야 된다인 것 같아요. 어느 정도 보관도 용이하고요. 쓸 때도 어쨌든 이게 힘이 들어가잖아요.
네.
그런 부분에서 많이 의식을 한 것 같습니다.
그리고 뭔가 이 줄이 다른 마우스 줄이랑은 달라요.
네.
되게 얇고 가벼운 느낌이 있어요. 마우스
보통
백이.
일반 마우스라고 하면은 이 선이 빡빡하거든요. 빡빡하다 보니까 마우스를 움직일 때나 또 오래 쓰다 보면은 마우스 선이 꺾이면서 단선이 되는 그런 경우도 있는데 선수들도 또 그런 부분에서 되게 예민하거든요.
예민하죠.
그래서 이 마우스 선은 이거는 진짜 잘 만든 것 같다라는 생각이 드는 것 중에 하나였어요. LCK 레전드에서 나온 그런 마우스다 보니까 여기 보시면 또 LCK 로고가 적용이 되어 있고요. 그 다음에 이렇게 좌측에 보시면은 레전드. 괜히 나도 레전드 된 것 같이.
제가 손이 막 그렇게 큰 편이 아니거든요.
네.
근데 아까 전에 요거
네.
마우스가 전체적으로 아무데나 눌러도 다 클릭이 된다고 해서 요게 좀 탐나는 것 같아요. 그런 게 불편했어요. 이렇게 누르는데 잘못 눌러가지고 괜히 실수나 놓치고 그런 점이 있었거든요.
네. 축하드립니다. 드디어 이렇게 장비 욕심에 들어오게 되셨어요.
겟했습니다. 그래서요, 고릴라님,
네.
저희가 오늘 리뷰한 LCK 이 키보드, 마우스 도대체 어디서 구매할 수 있는 거예요?
저희 lckshop.com에서 만나볼 수 있고요. 다양한 제품, 그러니까 뭐 티셔츠, 슬리퍼 다양한 제품들이 있으니까 다들 한번 와주셔서 구경하시면 좋을 것 같고 조연님도 혹시 와주실 거죠?
당연하죠. 일단 테스트를 해봤는데 여러분 이거 체험해보세요. 꼭 구매하세요.
LCK 레전드를 꿈꾸는 유저분들이라면
절대 놓치지 마세요.
놓치지 마세요.
여러분, 할 수 있어. 레벨업.
Hello and welcome back everyone to the LCK Summer Playoffs Round Number 1 Match 2. T1 versus Leaf Sandbox starts off the day, and this is our host Subin, joined by Victory and Gorilla. T1 made an adjustment on their roster heading into this playoff. Teddy is now playing on the main roster for T1. I think Leaf Sandbox decided to deal with Teddy back on the lineup with that Kalista pick for Prince, but that didn't quite work well. Everyone kind of expected this kind of a new roster from T1 based on the Scream data and also the solo queue timeline. So Leaf Sandbox paid a lot of attention on the Kalista pick. So we had an early lock-in for Prince, but Ashe traditionally is a really strong pick into Kalista, and also there was a mistake early on. Prince was staying in Ashe's range, and he started, he leveled Rand actually in level 1 as well, so he couldn't run away with that Q hop. And the topside pick from T1 was also having the priority. I think T1 all knew that Leaf Sandbox will go with the comfort pick on the top side of the map, so I really like the Azir pick from T1 as well. They kind of expected Fate to go with a pick like a Lucian, so T1 capped their mid lane priority with that Azir pick. Ashe was never picked up by T1 in the entire split. The Kalista was kind of forced for Leaf Sandbox to take in this draft, and T1 successfully countered that bottom lane pick with Ashe together with Leona. If the opponents have cannon, you need a champion that can deny the dive and flank coming out from that cannon. So Leaf Sandbox, they had to at least keep their Alistar pick to kind of allow more space for his teammates. However, you have to keep in mind that Effort is a player that makes plays. You know, he's not a player that protects his backline. He's more like an initiator. He's always going forward to find the teamfight opening. So this Alistar pick could really find a huge value as well. Now let's take a look at the first Herald fight, where we had 4 kills secured in total. Leaf Sandbox, they didn't have enough vision around the Herald, so they didn't have the exact information about the HP of the objective. So they were pushing towards the right-hand side of the river, so they had no idea where cannon would be. I think they were having a tunnel vision about that Herald and also the players on the mid lane. So the reaction from Leaf Sandbox wasn't really that clean, and they handed over too many kills over to T1. They were only focusing on their own play to open fight, but they actually planked on the fact that T1 also can make a great flank play. I think they were pretty much rushing at that point in the game, whereas T1, they had the presence of mind, and they knew the strength of their own comp. After 3 minutes of that play, we had another fight breaking out on the Rift. It was a very close fight, but Leaf Sandbox couldn't really seal the deal. One small kind of detailed play actually resulted in a huge result. So Kalista failed the Rand combo onto the minions, which means Prince, he has both of his Q and E skill on cooldown, so he didn't have enough damage to clean up the kill on Ashe. Headed for that Ashe kill, Prince could have been turning the fight around, but Teddy survived the fight, and then it was definitely a winning team fight, very easily won by T1 in the end. Those kind of a minor mistake can actually become a critical one in this kind of a decisive series, and other than that play, T1 never faced any risk or any problem all throughout this game. We were expecting a very close game between two teams, but it was a landslide victory secured by T1. And Teddy will pick up the player of the game on Ashe. Carry is what is said after picking up that first kill in the enemy jungle.
POG다. 왜냐면 테디의 출전만으로 리브 샌드박스에
Teddy just
보이게 만들었다는
being
얘기를
on the
했잖아.
roster kind of
이렇게
skewed
득점도
the
무엇보다
pick and ban from Leaf Sandbox as well. His presence itself was a carry for T1 as well. Well, a lot of players have a jinx about saying carry too early. You know, the fans were a little bit worried when Teddy was so confident after picking up that first kill, but Teddy, he has a great understanding about the champion matchup, and he knew how to capitalize on that. As she's so strong in lane, but she's also provides so many information with the hawk shot.
너무 우리가 많은 생각을 했나? 좀 오히려 단순하게
A slight bit of a weird coloring on the POG vote result. However, we managed to find the right vote heading over to Teddy this time around. 8 out of 12 votes secured by Teddy, including our good old chronicler voting for Teddy. Let's see whether Leaf Sandbox can pick up another one win to come back onto the best of 5 series.
Thank you so much, Ji-sun, for the analyst desk translation. And yeah, a little bit interesting there.
Slander.
A little bit of slander. Maybe just an assumption that maybe it would be English cast KW. Now it needs to be English cast KW question mark?
Yeah.
Because wasn't actually, but was at the same time because of highlighting issues. Not entirely sure. Well, congratulations to Teddy picking up player of the game for our first game of this particular series. Round 1 of the playoffs. Liv Sandbox really going to have to turn something around pretty drastically. Moving into the second game, I think that there was adequate criticism on the draft, but I think that we can go a step further. I think that this gentleman on your screen right now needs to find himself a better matchup there towards the bottom side of the map to really stand up against Teddy. Because the thing that's really difficult is Teddy's laning phase can be difficult to deal with, but it's his late game that is so extraordinarily strong. And if he gets an early advantage, I mean, where's your window back in? It's so difficult in the one-on-one matchup there on the bottom side. So I think really aiming for some Prince comfort is going to be an important thing. And Liv Sandbox might be able to do so by maneuvering towards the blue side. We have seen find a little bit more of an advantage.
Another fact outside of, you pointed out, the draft that we went over a lot, some missed executions left and right from Prince. Another big factor in what makes it so bad for Liv Sandbox specifically to fall behind that early is because Effort basically had no space. We saw him go 1 and 2 roams that never really worked out. Outside of that, he was mostly either locks in lane or trying to engage 5v5 fights. And I thought he got a couple of nice engages as Alistar, you know, found some ultimate knockups. That's good. But with that state of the game as it was, that's not going to be ever enough. Summit really only the one on his trademark Gnar that had a wonderful game, but yeah, one player having a wonderful game is not going to be enough. And
whoa, hey, looks like we are angling for a Lucian first pick on Liv Sandbox's side, which is what they love to do.
I actually think that they might go for the Rise instead.
I'm sort of hoping so.
Rise Evolution, yeah.
We'll see what is going to be banned here. Maybe just kind of trying to force Tier 1's hand on the Rise ban.
Yeah, also possible.
Perhaps.
Because you can also ban Lucian, and then if they ban Rise, you know, you can still look Viego, Diana, something like that. And if they don't ban Rise, well, then you first pick Rise, and you're very happy. Can also ban Rise yourself, but I think with how good Liv Sandbox have locks in it, that's indeed not going to be the angle. Instead, the Leona is taken away from Keria, who had a great game on it. And there we go. There is the Rise ban. So, Lucian first pick. Easy peasy.
Well, Viego also still available, and something that we saw T1 have a phenomenal amount of success with. Croco also the right kind of player for the job as well. So still some options on the table as far as what they're going to go for, but the Lucian certainly has remained very, very high.
B1 Gnar? It will be very Liv Sandbox.
I'm kind of hoping not, as the Diana first pick is going to come through. Very non-shim here for Liv Sandbox, as they are going to put Croco onto that pick once again. And not sure how I feel about it. I do like Diana paired with a lot more CC in their solos, so perhaps they could potentially go for something like that, but this will give T1 the Viego if they would like it. And then we'll see where Owner is going to go as far as locking away his next pick. Wouldn't even mind Keria just taking Thresh second round, and then you grab Jinx or Aphelios or whatever comes up, and you're super happy with how the thing goes.
It's an easy points because it's carry as fresh.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, you can. I think you can in any draft, in any situation, always mention that, even when some of the softer counters to fresh will already be locked in, just because you know what carry can do, and it enables so much. And this is interesting because an early LeBlanc, I think, should be countered. Live Sandbox, however, have shown that they're not necessarily that often opting into counters. But if you go for a...
If you go Nah Lissandra here, your top side's looking very strong.
You know what I like even more?
What do you like even
Nah Malzahar.
Oh! Yeah. Damn.
Nah, I think
What about Nah Morgana mid?
Yes.
Let's go back to 2015.
Yeah. Oh, that's way back.
Hey, it was the first Faker LeBlanc loss.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love it. I think it's great. I'm still kind of coming down from the amount of Morgana we saw at MSI, where the champion randomly got one of the best players in the game.
Yeah, that's
like that was not necessary. But I actually like Lissandra a lot more when it comes to combining with the Diana. But it will be set instead.
Yeah, we have to be careful. I think they're listening to the English broadcast. Got to make sure we give them good ideas, otherwise we might get blamed, because that is CC and solo lanes and a Diana. So
yeah,
I'm worried.
It's nice combos. Could still be pick for effort as well. That's a gauntlet that you throw, and it is a counter pick into Nah.
That's another one, and also going to be able to even out your damage range just a little bit as well. Don't mind the cannon being utilized here, as it worked out quite well for Cannon in game number 1.
And it also I think Cannon stylistically is an incredibly good champion into Live Sandbox, because Live Sandbox are just they're gonna draft dive. Right, that's their thing. That's their identity. When they look best, they get ahead and they dive. When they look a lot more rough, they get behind and they dive. And, well, that's going to be a Kalista pick, that's for sure.
Archery is illegal in this game. That has been completely denied. No archery allowed.
None.
Both of them taken away. All right, let's see what the next round of bans. I wouldn't mind an Ezreal ban here from T1. Because keeping Prince as uncomfortable as possible is certainly going to be a good idea.
Is a crossbow an archer? That's a great area.
A crossbow, does that count as archery?
Are you an archer if you use a crossbow? Because then you can have Quinn and
Vayne
and Triss, or not Triss, Twitch.
Akshan as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a couple of options, you know. There's a gray area there as the Kalista benders come through.
It's not archery because that requires a bow. So it's not archery.
It's a crossbow.
When you watched the Olympics, what were they using?
Well, they're not using crossbows.
Exactly.
But what would the word be for an archer?
A crossbow competition. We need to have one of those. Crossbows are underrepresented, as here is the Aphelios. And Jinx Thresh, I think, likely to be the answer.
Yeah, that's a freebie. No. Has there ever?
Wow, that was the shortest Susan hover that I've ever seen Effort do. He normally sits on it for much longer than that.
Yeah, he really does.
Wow, we are quick firing.
And
the Braum comes in.
I think the Braum's really nice into the top side of Sandbox. Picking Braum into Fresh specifically feels a lot less nice. It's an okay pick, does take away some of the agency, and as a whole, T1's composition, especially compared to the previous game, is not as well-rounded, I'd personally say. I think they lack engage to a certain extent if they do lose map control. Playing from ahead, this composition can do exactly the same thing. Almost impossible to move onto, as Sandbox, right between the Braum, Aphelios, his kiteback potential, as well as Viego and Cannon. That's a really tough ask. But the Live Sandbox comp looking a lot more well-rounded. Yes, the top side can dive aggressively, but late game you can also just play out around enabling Prince.
Yeah.
And much more comfortable matchup. No more Kalistas into Ashes. That makes me very happy, because this should at the very least be a more even game compared to game number 1.
Yeah, I don't expect Prince to die level 1 in the jungle, and that is certainly going to be a phenomenal start. And I really like what you spoke about here, because you can play pretty divey around the mid game. Super Mega Death Rocket as well as the Moonfall is a phenomenal combo for just making sure that you can get initial damage down. So the Wombo is certainly there here for Live Sandbox, but like you say, you can switch to more of that peeling playstyle for things like the Set and the Nah. So should be very interesting. The pick potential in the mid game here for the T1 composition is something that we should not underestimate, though, and their ability to potentially snowball, especially on the back of this viego, should certainly be something that we should keep in the back of our mind. So let's see how T1's going to be able to do it. Their macro control and their tempo advantage in the last game certainly saw them through, but will they be able to get that level of control now with a clean slate for Live Sandbox?
Oh my god. You are a wizard. What did I do? Look at Carrier's Keystone.
Oh.
It's there. It's there.
I was like, wait a second. I don't think I predicted anything. But yes.
Yes, you have.
Yeah, there we go.
It's a game early.
This is Carrier saying, like, anything you can do, I can do better. You know? He's like, be a T1 support. Well, we'll see. I don't know whether you can necessarily prove who's better at being a T1 support just yet. It's early days. However, let's see how many steals he can get in this game in comparison to effort.
And the T1 comp has an immense amount of explosiveness. And the one thing that I'd be scared about if I were them is that, which after the early game that you had last game and T1's early games in general shouldn't be the biggest of worries. But if you lack the necessary burst damage to actually blow up people with your LeBlanc and your cannon, then viego doesn't really get that much done, and there is definitely an amount of time where Teddy, unlike with the Ashe, is going to need time to skill up, right? He's going to need time to actually hit his item spikes. It takes a little bit longer for them to actually get to a point where they're going to feel comfortable, as Leashless start here for Owner means that Prince and Effort going to be a little bit behind. I think Prince got the experience for that minion, so shouldn't feel too horrible, but still control here available for Teddy.
Yeah, it looks like it based on that experience bar. We will have to see. So we'll check out some of the win rates here. Teddy, first game on Aphelios so far this season, is quite interesting, but we know that he's played a fair bit of it. Carrier's going to get flayed. He's going to answer back rather nicely. Meanwhile, Teddy just clearing out that wave, looking for that level 2, but it is going to be Live Sandbox that do collect it first. No actual engage to come through on that one as the hook going to miss. The Unbreakable was there regardless.
And with both junglers pathing topside as well, also expecting to see a similar style of game where it's going to be all about the topside. As I think that last game we saw that it was honestly, outside of course the advantage that were already being accrued across the map by the entirety of T1, specifically Teddy and Owner. Yeah, I don't know.
That's not bad.
No. It's, you know, 82%, that's...
Certainly not the 100% that it was, you know, at the beginning of 2015, but still, it's pretty good.
How dare he, Atlas? How dare he drop below 100%?
And also, as far as LCK win rate was concerned, it took a little bit longer than that for that 100% to go down. As Owner should be able to pretty comfortably collect himself this Rift Scuttler, but it is in full vision of Live Sandbox, and they are going to answer by taking a Rift Scuttler of the bottom side of the map.
And this is the last time it was done by Teddy and Carrier, and this time it's done by Effort and Prince, so that's a nice pivot. Last time it was a really bad feeling for Sandbox, and it kind of ties as wow. That's 2 great win streaks.
Yeah, we are win streaking pretty hard for both of these 80 carries, and one of them is going to have to lose. And as we have a look, history states that it should be the Aphelios.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense, right? Jinx outranges the Aphelios, takes away a lot of the potential for him to go full 200 years, as we know he loves to do. Requires a little bit more proactive play into him for that to really be a thing. And Jinx can also team fight, especially with a Thresh.
Fate in a bit of trouble. Sidesteps absolutely everything, though, as they do manage to get the concussive blows, but Fate's like, nah, I got the pit grit. I'm going to be absolutely fine. Nice dancing shoes here from Fate.
He's dancing, Atlas. That was very impressive. Doesn't even the boots yet. Of course, does have fleet, so marginally more movement speed.
So maybe the dancing socks. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I looking at the icon, I'd imagine that fleet is like an enchantment, right? Or it's like a kind of a, like, what is it really when you get fleet footwork in your rune choice? Like, what does it do for you? Does it give you boots? Does it give you just better feet?
I don't know.
No. It's an interesting question.
This is something that we will need to go into more, but perhaps maybe not at this time.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
Of course, the interesting thing is that the amount of pressure that's being soaked by Liv Sandbox is very different from the early game, and now Fate.
Yeah, Croco looking to make his way in. No more face breakers available, and the showstopper not there just yet. Just to let you guys know, the stats that we're showing for these matchups and things like that is based on the summer season, as Fate might just die here. One more auto, the flash, but the auto is already in the air, and Faker will get the first blood solo kill this time around.
Caught on too long on that haymaker, and without that, a lot of your survivability just immediately gone. Faker finding, honestly, an effortless kill. Felt very nonchalant, just throw in the auto, doesn't even have to use his summoners there, and it's exactly those type of kills you can't afford to give over, because I think one of the things that as Liv Sandbox you were looking for was a relatively uneventful early to mid game, and then find a good team fight, you know, get that Maganar, get a 1-2k gold lead and snowball the game from there. When Faker's getting early kills on LeBlanc, it's not a good look.
Yeah, Fed LeBlanc can also skew an entire game, as we're going to watch Faker
뺐어.
navigate this one.
살았어.
And it's sidestep into, lands the chain, skirts it past the
미드
minion.
잡았고 미드 노플. 뭐하노?
Got mid.
나이스.
No flash. What are you doing? That's what he said at
Good.
the end.
나 6분에 봉풀.
I hope that you guys could hear the Korean casters in the background there, losing their minds.
And that is exactly the type of thing that I think from Fate or Summit.
Yeah, slicing Maelstrom. Just going to be softening up Summit here just a little bit. Just tells him to get out of his lane. It's a bit of a get off my lawn type play there, as Liv Sandbox going to take away yet another Southern Rift Scuttler. There's Teddy. Just uses the last of his Calibrum there quite effectively to get some poke damage down.
And it's also something that I traditionally wouldn't expect from Fate. I think when you levy criticism at Fate, it'd be more towards his sometimes inconsistent late game. But his laning phase has honestly generally been super solid. Has been able to match with the best, never really lose lane, find good skirmishes together with Croco. And the one kill on LeBlanc is not a disaster like it was in game number 1, right? It's a minor gold lead. It's something that as T1 you're going to be very happy about because it gives you just that extra edge when you set up vision traps for Liv Sandbox. But it's not insurmountable. But it is the type of moments, I think, as Liv Sandbox also kind of are going to get in your head.
Yeah.
You know, like just getting killed like that, giving up such a freebie, honestly. And Fate.
Yeah. Faker fishing for yet another chain, but Fate pretty close to his turret this time around. He should be okay. As Teddy and Carrier looking very aggressively postured here on the bottom side of the map on Liv Sandbox. They know that Faker and Owner are both out of position, and Prince is just dead. Carrier going to be able to stand beside his jungler, and Teddy moves out of the turret range. The minions still there, and this is going to be a fair few plates. As Shelly will go over to Liv Sandbox, but how many plates will T1 be able to collect bottom side as their reward?
And they might not even get Shelly.
Yeah, okay. Got a bit of a teleport coming through here from the keystone of Carrier. So he's going to turn up. Cannon's going to have to flash away pretty early, though, as Carrier's going to surprise them by popping towards this Baron pit. Now moving potentially away as Croco. Moonlight Vigil going completely wide. The Moonfall, I tell a lie, is now Summit. He's going to have to get out of there. T1 immediately on top of him, though, as Cannon just blocking the rest of Liv Sandbox out of the area. He will sacrifice himself for it as Faker just watches as the hook doesn't connect. And now he's got his cooldowns back. Heartbreaker comes forward. Effort going to be taken down. And now it's just the resets to come through. Faker collects another kill, and Sandbox are falling apart.
And that started out relatively well, but with the showstopper being used in an attempt to immediately assassinate Kana, you need to cash in on that. But instead, you get surprised by, of all things, the teleport from the Brom, which, that's a shocker.
That certainly broke my brain at the beginning of that fight.
Yeah, it did. And here you see the value of the pressure that Faker was able to have in that lane, right? Because he's able to get that kill, you're able to get bot side vision control, you're able to get the shove. And because you get the shove, even with a relatively minor wave getting thrown down into an AD carry that has decent wave clear, they don't have time to clear the wave, right? So the 4-man dive is successful. And then Croco, if you're able to hit the ultimate, you might be fine. But honestly, would have liked for him to wait a little bit longer. Not quite coordinated with Summit, because Summit's Nars have been so good. And if you can combo that, you can win this fight. You see even here, it's relatively close. If that hook hits on Faker, that might turn it around, but instead they overchase. And that's where the power of the Viego de LeBlanc and the Brom really shines.
Yeah, as soon as one domino falls down, it's just so easy for T1 to follow it through.
리콜하자. 나 리콜.
Unsealed spellbook. Carrier pretty happy about his decision, already reaping the rewards. The Flame Trumpers just tell Teddy to move away, and he's going to say, all right. As now, he's just looking to kill Prince underneath this turret. Moonlight Vigil is going to miss. Good sidestep there from Prince, as Teddy is going to take a turret shot, but still wins out on the trade, as now Summit is dead here on the top side of the map. Goodbye. And T1 now just going to start the Rift Herald for themselves, and oh dear, Chronicler, this is going to hell in a handbasket.
Remember when I said the sandbox bot side can scale, nicely done, has a lot of really, I say varied power as well, can go multiple modes later in the game. And the top side, good dive. Nice early skirmishing and team, well, they're collectively 0-4. They got 1 assist on Fate, but that is pretty much it. The 1 kill that they get also didn't go to Prince. It went to Effort. And they're not going to get this Drake, so they lose the Herald. They lose the fight. They are now considerably far behind in gold. And this is where that win condition from T1 is in full effect, right? Like you just find one person, doesn't really matter who, and you blow them up. And as long as you don't group up with 5 people and you keep a little bit of a nice spread, you keep your slicing Maelstrom for a good moment, you know, Carrier can get a lot done, can exhaust someone like Croco when he tries to go in. With this deficit already this big, it should be almost impossible for Liv Sandbox to find their way back through one decisive play. So then it comes down to, is T1 going to make a lot of positional mistakes in side lanes? Are they going to fall, face check brushes, get found by Effort?
Well,
and I don't think that's a great place to be for Sandbox.
Yeah, I think that if T1 have showed us anything, it's been pretty clean, the play around their positioning, and this wasn't for Summit, unfortunately. Just overextended there just a little bit, as now Effort can avoid the Winter's Bite. As he moves on out of the way, but Ona looking for Prince, who is told that he is not allowed to head towards this lane.
Yeah, that's gone. There's Chakrams available and an Herald, and this is the cross-map play being set up by Sandbox, and this should be successful. Faker does have TP.
Yep, Slicing Maelstrom is available. There's no stopwatch here for Canna or anything like that, so this is dangerous, and that teleport that you were talking about certainly comes on in. The special delivery of the cannon, he keeps himself alive for quite some time, but the face break is good. Croco gonna find the Moonfall, but it's not going to be enough to save his life, as now Faker actually moving the other way, just playing the do-si-do here with Liv Sandbox. The Summit gets into angry mode, but it is going to be about Faker just trying to run them around. The Haymaker comes through, the Gnar is avoided, and Faker is going to take his time moving back to this one, and he knows that he can make this a 1v1 on either side, but still not enough funny business available, as the Rift Herald is going to charge into the mid lane once again, and he bought enough time for the rest of his team to really throw down.
Yeah, that's not worth at all. You lost mid-turret, and you're going to lose plates here. Might even get dove. Owner is in the area.
Yeah, Teddy's got those close-range guns as well, feeling pretty good about that. As looking for yet another plate. Look at this, he's so strong right now. He's got the Gale Force completed as well, which is not the most common item that we see. Going to be more of that traditional crit 80 carry without the added safety of things like the shield bow. But the extra mobility going to be really helpful against Moonfall and the Gnar.
It also fits into the theme of what we've seen from Teddy today, which is I'm here to show who's boss, okay? And Gale Force allows me to do that, as no wave available, which means that Summit already takes as much damage as he does here. And then Croco's forced to go in aggressively, take as much damage as he does, and then, yeah, really nice. A juke here by Faker, but look at mid lane, look at bot lane while this is happening. It's, you know, you get him eventually. You get the LeBlanc, but Faker wastes as much time as possible. And you get both mid lane turret, a second charge, and a plate on bot side. So you're going to be extremely happy with that, because it's also still, it's a 2-for-1, you know? It's not the worst. Oh, no.
Okay, Prince not going to overextend.
But there's
okay, maybe overextending includes moving towards your outer turret in the bottom lane.
Yes.
As look at all of this vision for T1 as well in the area. My goodness, it's such a scary place to be for a Jinx, even if she has Lantern access.
I think Carrier just ghosted.
Yeah, why not? Got to cycle through your summoner spells. He likes pressing buttons.
Why not?
Yeah. Take it away from him as Fate tries to run towards Faker, who is going to close that distance himself. Hook is going to go wide. Faker is just playing with them here in the mid lane. T1 rotate over. And this is a very happy Faker this game. Managed to find himself his solo kill in the early stages. And now it's all about just having this mid game, which T1, we already said this earlier on, right? Their comp is so strong in the mid game if they are able to get any sort of advantage, because playing around Vision for this comp, so scary for Live Sandbox.
They don't even need an advantage. You just need to not be behind.
Oh,
but when
Prince
they do,
almost
oh
explodes. The chains are still connected. It's not quite enough damage just yet here for Faker.
That's through exhaust.
Yeah.
That's why Atlas starts giggling, because what else can you do? Like, he got exhausted. He's level 11 already. He's 3 levels up on Prince. And that just kind of hammers down the desperation that you gotta imagine that Live Sandbox is feeling here as... Oh.
All right, there's a Gale Force as the ulti comes through from Carrier, but the flash was there from Summit. Still happy to make that trade. But yeah, T1... Yeah, this is what I thought Teddy bought the Gale Force for, by the way.
Yeah.
It's basically a Prowler's Claw. Let's be real.
He's that'd be really honing in on the...
Yeah, you just don't want that much lethality, you know, because he's already going to build a collector, so Gale Force is going to fit. Absolutely fine.
It's terrifying. And the problem with the Sandbox, like trying to play this comp from behind, this comp, until very late in the game, you're looking at 3 items from Prince, needs to do stuff to actually get something done, right? Like, you have very limited range wave clear. It's basically just Prince. If he doesn't pop off in fights, you're going to be reliant on the synergy between your 3 topsiders. But again, with the amount of control that is available, T1 are really going to have to run into it as...
Yeah, Croco and Fade moving on in here. Carrier is just going to give himself away for this one, knows that he's dead. And meanwhile, Inner Turret falls in the mid lane. And I don't even know whether much more is going to be collected here from Live Sandbox on the top side of the map, as Shirley has been started here by Owner. But that, I think, seems a little bit overly aggressive, as they will be able to take the top outer turret. So that is going to be the trade for the Inner. Not necessarily the greatest, but Summit is also splitting on the bottom side.
I think you can take it, I just don't think they want to. Which is kind of funny, but with the amount of pressure that they've already found, the outers already down in both mid and bot, and the fact that, yeah, giving up this Drake as well, or getting this Drake rather as T1, just puts off... Oh no, it's Infernal. So, oh no.
That's going to break down some of the walls here as T1 moving on in. Not going to be able to steal away Shirley, but now they're just going to guard the eye as best they can. And Live Sandbox, they're not allowed into this river. This is T1 territory. And it's just not going to be a thing. So the eye's looking around, it's like, where are my owners? Where's my family? They're not coming to collect you, I'm sorry. You're going to have to go back to the Void.
It's just the saddest.
Yeah.
Actually, is it sadder than being, you know, taken and then forced to throw yourself into a turret?
Yeah, I don't know. And maybe going back to the Void is exactly where the Herald does want to go.
Going back to your family?
Yeah. I don't actually know what's in the Void. I would assume not much, because it's a Void. But
no, there's you know, there's all sorts of monsters and Kassadin.
Yeah.
Isab spent a little bit of time there. Yeah, comes to mind as well. And a cute note there, I think we're going to go back to the Carrier play. The reason why Carrier doesn't get away here is because he doesn't have Flash. Which is kind of ironic, considering he just used Flash in an attempt to kill Summit.
Yeah.
And it's something that we've seen from T1 already in the previous game as well. Obviously, that one was basically won when Teddy decided to flash over a wall. But it's these little moments that, to me, say that T1, they feel like they're in complete control of this game. I don't think you make those plays if you're like, we need to play this 100% clean, right? Like, no way, we can't give up any advantage for free. That kill not going to mean anything in the grand scheme of things, but the fact that Carrier is willing to flash that far forward on Braum, a champion that just doesn't have the greatest of engage, is a clear sign that they're having a good time. Also, Carrier's cleanse, by the way, just making sure that everyone knows that.
Yeah, he does now. Now he can cleanse and stand beside his teammates, and he's going to be absolutely fine. That exhaust going to be there as well in case Croco decides to dive on top. Certainly a fantastic tool there. It's now T1 trying to work out where their next port of call is going to be as far as putting on the extra pressure. It's currently 4,000 gold in the lead. Things going swimmingly here for T1 in game number 2. Wasn't expecting a 3-0 for this one. But T1 certainly coming in looking like the strongest team so far today. hoping that we can see Liv Sandbox try and turn this one around, try to come alive here in this series. There's still an opportunity in this game, but they do have a tall hill to climb as Canna finds Fate, gets a bit of damage onto the set.
And I think that opportunity to get back into this game for Liv Sandbox is the Baron. That is basically the only opportunity. There have been many a Baron throw in the LCK. Just, I mean, in general, in League history, you know, there's a lot of them. And in this scenario, unlike last game, I think that T1 at a point might get seduced into trying and go for a greedy Baron. And I think that turn, not as good as it was. I think it's harder to move into them because of the Brom, the Aphelios. And we've seen teams just set up shop. Nongshim did this yesterday, where they just like, yeah, just come into the Baron pit. It's okay, it will work out for you. Because that's where Liv Sandbox, I think, have an opportunity. Then maybe you can get multi-man combos, you can try and get Prince to pop off once he has his second item available, at the very least. Ideally you want third, but I don't think that Sandbox is going to get that much time in this game. So that Lord Dominic's possibly not going to be within reach. So then as T1, if you just play that cleanly, you have good control of the area, and you get off Baron soon enough to try and turn, I think it's really hard for Sandbox. And T1 are playing accordingly as well. Yeah, no, this is very impressive here from T1, as Croco just going to spot the fact there is a bit of a turret there sitting in the brush. Summon in Meganar, going to be a difficult one to dive, especially with Croco there to assist, but you can see T1 have just claimed all of this vision towards this top side. If they win a fight, it could just be Baron. Remember, Teddy is very strong in this game. With Sandbox, 4-man strong here underneath their turret. They don't have the set, but he has teleport available. T1 just playing with some smoke and mirrors. They push that wave in. They decide that they're not going to push their luck. Mid lane once again going to be tended to. Faker going to be able to do that as he spots the rest of Liv Sandbox. Pokes his head in and says, well, that's a few too many. Just saying hello. Yeah. And yeah, now you had the 2-item spike on Teddy. Yeah, oh yeah, you can't fight this as Sandbox. I'm like, maybe the 2-item. That was a big reset. Yeah, and then it's like, oh, Faker is on. Oh, Owner got yeah, no, that is not fightable. That is not an objective you can contest. And I already made a bit of general unhappy noises when we saw the Infernal Soul. And the reason for that is that Infernal Soul on a Fat LeBlanc or a Cannon or an Aphelios,
anyone that does damage.
Yeah, it's not very fun to play into, and it's also less space available for the Summit to make the big plays, right? Look at the spaciousness that is now here for T1. Drake's getting started up.
Yeah, Fate looking over to the side here, looking for Canna, finds him, knows that he was going to be searching for a flank as well. As you can see, the Dragon just running between his two potential masters. It is going to be secured by Prince, but the Moonlight Vigil will connect. Glacial Fissure comes down, but the follow-up is not great, and T1 just going to have to let them get away. Good disengage here and good denial from Liv Sandbox.
A lot of respect there from T1, now trying to get the macro play by rotating towards mid. Can definitely get a shove on this mid wave if they want to play it a little more greedy. Won't. Instead, gonna take control of the Baron pit. Don't expect they'll actually try and go for an attempt to take it. That is a lot more risky. And you see that Liv Sandbox, they still have an amount of engage that needs to be respected. And unlike last game, yes, a 4k gold deficit is a big one, but it's not an insurmountable one, right? No. And if T1, if you just group up there and you get baited into trying and contesting against a Summit or a Croco that finds a multi-man play, then you're still in deep trouble.
Yeah, especially once Prince gets some items. But right now, he doesn't necessarily have them. Hasn't hit item number 2 yet. We're going to be waiting for 3 before it really, truly comes online. And even then, it might not be enough, given how decelerated he has been with all the pressure that T1 have put on bottom side as carrier. Going to face check here just a little bit. He's going to continue forward. Owner is in the area. They get the flash out of effort. The chains are going to connect. Now looks for the hook, but does not find it. Faker diving in once again. As, oh my goodness, the poke damage is ridiculous here. As T1 will bully them out of their own jungle here on the top side of the map.
Really nicely done there as well. And yeah, Summer tries to do as much damage as he can. A little bit stronger now with the Black Cleaver finished, so will augment the damage for both Prince and to a certain extent Fate, but that's not going to be it, right? You just need to be there with 5 people and you need to get the combo. There is no other way around it for you. The nice thing though is that with Liv Sandbox getting that Drake, they bought themselves at the very least 5 more minutes.
Yep.
And that is time that will allow Prince to get into a position. And One thing that we didn't get to see in last game because it was over very early is how tenacious Liv Sandbox is. Right? And the series to Nongshim comes to mind where it was just... They would not give up. They were as tenacious as they come, and that is something that in this game, with T1's rather limited engage, barring blow-up potential that Faker has or a flank from Kana, is a little bit more of a nuisance to deal with if Liv Sandbox play it very close to the chest.
Yeah. Liv Sandbox being able to pick up that Drake has the other effect, the added effect, optimistically speaking, of them now potentially stacking up 4 of them, which would be very, very scary if you were T1. Right now, that's not looking like it is in the realm of possibility, but, well, actually, no, it's in the realm of possibility, just hasn't made it to the room that says probability on it just yet. They're still in between rooms as far as that is concerned. Yeah, I think possibility is like the foyer.
That's also a much larger area of the building.
Yeah. It's in fact infinitely large in a lot of ways. As Owner, he's looking for Crocker here on the backside, and now he's going to get delivered 3 members of Liv Sandbox. There's the Heartbreaker. Owner just taking this one by himself for now, but he does have the stopwatch. Flame Chomper's not going to connect as Effort has a stopwatch of his own, but he's still most likely going to die. Crocker uses his over the wall, will keep him alive, but now he's not actually able to continue fighting. Summit in the same boat as he hops his way out of this one, and T1 with this 1 pick, is it enough to get themselves the Baron? And Teddy with that Crescendum Severum combo. That's a lot of Baron damage. Looks like they are going to go for it.
And that is still, I think, a possibility for Liv Sandbox to turn. I would much rather, as T1 I think is doing, try and set up a trap, right? Not actually do this. Wait for them to walk in. Are going to start it after all, because this is now another Liv Sandbox. If you can find them here, if you can take down, hit those multi-man ultis, T1... Dangerous game here.
Still available here as Fate does find himself the Facebreaker, but he's not going to be able to find his way in. Teddy with the Graviton, but no Moonlight Vigil, and T1 do just back away, not biting off more than they can chew in this instance.
And the result of that is that now Liv Sandbox, they can shove mid and possibly take control of the bot side jungle as well. And that could give them an easy avenue into a second Infernal Drake. And while the gold lead is still there for T1, we're seeing how Liv Sandbox using the pressure that they have available with this threatening combo.
Oh dear, Kana gonna get his face broken yet again as Summit moves on forward. There's a slicing Maelstrom, finds himself the stopwatch, but it's not going to keep him alive, just smashed into the wall. Unfortunately, the cannon is going to fall down, so now T1 will be without their cannon for 30 seconds of this Dragon's beginnings of life.
The downside of this is that now T1 is the one who's going to be able to take control over the bot side river, right? And as Liv Sandbox, they make the call to try and keep pushing a little bit, sending 3 people back. So they're just going to give up this Drake and try to get themselves back in a better position gold-wise. And looking at Prince's items, more global gold I think is good. Because while it's still, I think, a relative long shot, with Prince sitting on a 3rd item, that fight in 5 minutes all of a sudden feels a lot more winnable. The gold lead has shrunk to only 2k.
No, I agree. I actually think that it was smart. You know, cut your losses, assume that you're not far ahead enough to really want to go for too much more of a fight, but maybe you're going to be able to find something as the lantern going to be very valuable. Prince avoids getting that last auto through. Owner was desperate for it. Still not enough to win them the team fight.
And the amount of damage that was soaked here by Effort before it actually dies is insane. Also takes a Moonlight Vigil to the face, uses his stopwatch, dodges a lot. And honestly, I would have rather seen Sandbox make a play on the Dragon here. I think that the play that they went for now is high risk, high reward. Because if you win that fight, you're golden in 5 minutes. If you lose it and you give up the Infernal Soul, that is basically any possibility for you to win the game. It's kind of gone. Because once Void stuff is finished for Faker and he has an Infernal Soul, you're not going to live. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter that you have heal available or a fresh there with you. Unless you have all your summoners, you know, then you can probably survive 1 jump in. But it's not the craziest place to be. So high risk, high reward from Liv Sandbox. Because now trying to put themselves in a position to win the subsequent fight, turn that into a possible Baron. And ST1, we mentioned earlier, and we're really seeing it now, is that their ability to turn not nearly as strong as in Game 1, and that Leona ban actually paying dividends, because even with how good the Braum is, it's much more of a reactive pick.
No, I agree. I think you're exactly right, and I'm looking forward to seeing how T1 are going to be able to try and navigate this one. They've managed to hit the Infinity Edge spike a little bit earlier, as you would expect, given the fact that Teddy is about 1,200 gold ahead of Prince. Prince has 3 minutes to get that third item. Already has his Crit Cloak and a pickaxe, so not too far. Want to see him get priority on all of these waves, make sure that Jinx can be as powerful as possible moving into this next one. And then Liv Sandbox need to switch that playstyle into more of that protect the Jinx style composition, which I think they've already started to do.
Yeah.
But they've closed this gold lead, man. Like, it has really stagnated for T1.
And this is looking a lot more like the T1 that we saw at the beginning of round 1, right? The beginning of summer, where it, yes, their early game was still okay. I think at round 2 it went from okay to being just simply one of the best, if not the best, in the early game that we saw from teams, barring maybe Afrika within the LCK. But this lack of activity and being relatively low pace, if they don't find big leads and run over the game, is something that in longer games, T1 have actually faltered the most, I feel like. It's where they kind of lack the conviction that a team like Liv Sandbox, they have it in spades. I call them tenacious already, and you can see it here as well. Because Prince, in 2 minutes, I guarantee you that Infinity Edge will be finished, and that is the point where a Jinx can just start taking up fights completely. And there is a lot of ways for T1 to mitigate that. There's a lot of ways to kill the Jinx. But just the fact that the possibility exists would scare me as a T1 fan. Whereas as a Liv Sandbox fan, I'm like, oh boy.
It's a just maybe situation.
It's a possible. Not probable yet. I feel like that.
No, we're still in the foil. It's a large room to get through.
Yeah,
you're exactly right.
But we're making way.
Yeah. You gotta hike it out, and that's exactly what they're doing. I feel like this metaphor has gone probably to the edge of its limits, but I hope that we can keep pushing it. As T1 now just still tidying up waves here and there. You can see Summit actually basically winning in a side lane. This is what sort of happens. Kennen not exactly a side laning champion. We have double Void Staffs completed, but the Infinity Edge is now done. 1 minute until the potential Infernal Soul for T1. And they are going to be fighting for this one. Is Liv Sandbox ready for a team fight? 3 items on Diana, 3.5 items on the Gnar, and most importantly, the 3 picked up for the Jinx as Faker gets out of the way of the Facebreaker. Teddy's softened up just a little bit, but he's got the Calibrum and the Crescendum. Certainly what you want when you want to be fighting from afar.
I'm just worried that T1 is not going to contest this. To be fair, though, it is a second Drake, so they can just trade for Baron and be completely fine.
Yeah, I guess that is the more
the more conventional option. And it looks like that's what they're doing, but the vision control is really good from Sandbox. So I don't know whether timeline-wise that's really going to work out, as they're moving up here from Sandbox, trying to get prior control so they can either rotate towards Baron or the Dragon.
Yeah, Canna in position to grab the minion wave, but this is a lot of control for T1. Sorry, for Liv Sandbox. Did manage to get that wave pushed out. So, Drake has now spawned. Liv Sandbox still thinking about whether or not they want to contest for this Baron or just take the Drake. And Summit has said Dragon time. And T1 have said that they are just starting off on this Baron. Super Mega Death Rocket will spot it out. And Canna waiting over to the side. So second Infernal does go over to Liv Sandbox, and T1 feeling the pressure. They want to be able to take this one. They burst it and stolen! This is the team of Steelers, and it's going to be Croco's turn this time. And now T1 try to look for the fight to salvage it. They take down both. As now the dive on forward, the Superplex is good from Fate, but he may just die, as Summit is the last man standing that has a Baron wrapping around him. I say that a little bit ahead of time, but I don't think Fate's going to survive this one. And that's exactly right. He goes golden for a moment to buy some time for his Gnar. He is still going to fall down, so that is 1 Baron, but it's a good steal there from Liv Sandbox that deny yet another opportunity for T1 to grab themselves the Infernal Soul.
The downside, of course, is that while you get the Baron, you give up basically everything. And now T1 with the counter push, death timers are pretty long at this point, Atlas.
Yeah, we are 35 minutes into this game, so Teddy should be able to start ripping through this inhibitor turret. And it's basically an afterthought. They're going to back away before taking down the inhibitor. 2 inner turrets remain in the side lanes. T1 probably going to tidy up that area of the map in the meantime. So let's check this one out once again. Croco, bit of a hero play here.
Yeah, it's a beautiful play. Vision provided by Prince, and then Croco going in very deep, able to get that. But then the problem is, now he's stuck there on his own. Really nice zoning by Kana, even with the exhaust. Prince and Effort immediately taken extremely low, which means the cleanup for Faker and Ona is easy peasy. Another downside there is that while the play to get the Dragon was successful, it also meant that Summit was basically on halfway through his transformation already, right? Like had been Maganov for a while it was taking the Drake, so coming in there, didn't actually have that teamfight form available for the whole fight, because that could have changed it a little bit as well, I think, where if he gets one more stun, keeps Prince alive for a little bit longer, could have been the turning point. And yeah, you still have the Baron buff on one person, but still I think that's a trade that you do take as T1. Honestly, I think the Drake take, in the grand scheme of things, more influential than the Baron steal, which is kind of weird to say.
Yeah, and we've seen this happen a lot, especially with these slower games, right? Indecisiveness breeds a lack of value for things like the Baron that do certainly require you to push that advantage to make things work. Currently, you can see the Baron power play sitting at about -100 gold, which means it's doing approximately nothing. Carrier does notice that there was a hook that went over the wall. And of course he had vision there of Effort when he was throwing that one out, so clears out the ward. And T1 just back to their scaling mode. You do have now a Quicksilver Sash on Teddy as well as the Last Whisper. So he's starting to augment this build. And the Teddy ending is, I believe, what T1 are playing for now. Moonlight Vigil just barely missing onto Prince there as they do get the box out of Effort. You're not going to be too worried about that though, as Live Sandbox, as they do trade Teddy's ult. And that is certainly good news, Live Sandbox being able to play this defensively quite well in the mid lane, but being defensive is not going to win you the game. And I believe we can say that to both teams at this point in time.
I guarantee you that Live Sandbox are going to take control of the river, and then T1 is going to say, it's not Soul, we're going to give it up, and then we get 5 more minutes, and then we get gameplay.
But that's like, even then without the Soul, that's like a triple Infernal Jinx. She's going to be doing a lot. Like, that's a lot of AD.
But you don't have to go, so why would you go, Atlas?
Ooh, that's a good point. That's something I can get around.
Yeah, I don't think it's good. Let me be very upfront about that. I don't think that should be the call.
Yeah.
I'm not saying this from a position of this is what I'd like to see. However, this is, I think, fairly high chance of this happening.
Yeah, I think you might be right. Having also been here and watched a few of the games.
Yes.
Here in the LCK. This is certainly a bit of a worry, as now Summit going to take a lot of damage from Faker, but not going to commit to anything as the Gnar bar is quite large.
Yeah, can we also... Summit had an amazing game 1, and then it wasn't enough. Also, basically unstoppable and unkillable by anyone on T1, right? Like, no one can really answer him inside, I don't think, with the Wit's End as well. And still very much in a position to carry games. 30 seconds on the clock for Drake, and...
Ooh, decent flanking ward here. It's quite far away for Canna, but he could get there if they do decide to move down to this dragon. They're looking for a bit of poke as the Chakrams do come back to Teddy. Calibrum is available as Ona's going to move to the south. T1 trying to keep them in position as there's the Moonlight Vigil. A lot of damage as Prince. Faker now looking for him. He's got a huge target. I mean, Faker just needs to get in there with a couple of spells and he's dead. Teddy going to use his QSS to stop that hook from being anything to worry about. T1 almost managing to find what they want. Faker just needs to find one more little pick, one more little corner as Canna has moved that teleport towards exactly the ward we were talking about. Prince now eating through some honey fruit as in goes Ona, and there is the slicing maelstrom. Canna gets rid of Prince from the team fight, but my God! Summit and Croco obliterate the bottom lane of T1! And the top side of Live Sandbox have done their job, and now it looks like it is going to be 3 Drakes going over to Live Sandbox.
And the trigger does get pulled, but it doesn't end well for T1 as that backline dive coming into full force. A very split up fight as Croco... Yeah.
Oh no. Faker should be able to finish him off here as, yeah, the Diana is going to fall. Ona's going to be able to get the resets, and now Fate is going to be in trouble as well. The Haymaker does absolutely nothing. Summit trying to come forward looking for more, but maybe he's just put himself in position to be taken down here. The Facebreaker is going to connect. As now Ona heartbreaks, but yeah, I think the heartbreak belongs to Summit this time around as Faker just pops to as many different directions as he is likely to go. Gnar comes down, but the drill is not going to connect onto Faker. And it's only a matter of time, and that is going to be the finish as T1, in the end, I think, find the advantage they were looking for.
Because that that play was won. That was beautifully done by Liv Sandbox. You get the Drake, you get a couple of kills, and then they get baited into an extended skirmish that is beautifully played out. And the reason why this goes this way is because you see the fight is split up, and it's Fate and Summit that find Carrier and the Aphelios. Yeah, it's Aphelios, you know, you're good in playing into dive when it's front to back, not when they're actually on top of you, as is the case there. And then this bot side, it obviously goes okay. Nice exhaust there immediately onto Kana. Who is able to, straight up 1v2 them. Cannon at this point, and monstrously fed also as the Rabadon's finished. And then here you're like,
tired in the middle there, as you saw.
This is perfect. You know, just give up Croco. Just give up Croco and you're completely happy here.
Well, you're not completely happy, but you're more happy as Fate decides that, sometimes Fate decides against you. That's without the capital.
No, I agree. And this is something that I think we've given a lot of criticism to Liv Sandbox as a whole, justifiably so, is that they are baitable into these kind of skirmishes, and then you're skirmishing late game against a LeBlanc and a Viego, and that just doesn't really work, unfortunately. Now, the Baron was picked up. It's not over quite yet. Liv Sandbox still in the game, and there will be a Drake in 2.5 minutes, which can still be picked up, but...
The 7th Drake of the game.
Yep.
Certainly feeling like a big collection of dragons this time around. His owner is going to get himself out of the way here. Prince. Okay, that's a big flash from Effort. Not going to find the Flay, though. Maybe a slight whoopsie. Maybe some over-aggression here. Some desperation showing for Liv Sandbox. As it's back to a 4,000 gold lead. Teddy on the bottom side of the map, but the rest of the team are in position. Faker and Carrier just playing bodyguard. Stop Teddy from being in any trouble at all. Get this wave pushed in, top side. It's doing the same thing as Liv Sandbox coming down to defend. Baron buff still here on T1. They're pushing power very strong as Faker. It's a lot of poke damage onto Croco. Half of his health bar now taken down. Liv Sandbox 4 strong. Down here, should be able to defend. Stop this inner turret from falling.
And we talked about the lack of power that Liv Sandbox have available when they're playing defensively, and their relative lack of ranged wave clear. As long as Prince is in the lane, obviously Prince's wave clear is nuts. The sieging for T1 is also not great unless you find damage like that.
Yeah, Moonlight Vigil comes down. That is a lot of damage. That's going to be enough to grab themselves this inner turret. T1 didn't have to invest too much towards that one. Love that play. Almost unanswerable. Yeah, by Liv Sandbox, as Prince just takes too much damage if he's caught in the AoE.
And now if you get the topside inhibitor and you keep poking away with Faker, setting up for this next Infernal. Yeah, it's a bit of a roundabout way as T1, but as long as the end result is good, I don't think you're going to complain. You got to imagine as well that as Liv Sandbox, if you lose this one, it's going to feel bad. Double teleport coming in.
Yeah, Fate might be met by T1 though. All 5 members now just collapsing on top of him. The Mimic Distortion will get Faker in there as he moves back to the first one, then the second one. And he is going to be able to at least deter Fate from getting on over there. I was a bit scared for the Liv Sandbox mid laner, but survives in the end. Not going to get routed by T1 at this stage. 45 seconds on that all-important Infernal Soul. And this is a soul for both teams. Now, Liv Sandbox have earned themselves a reputation of being stealers, thieves here in the LCK. They are so good at winning those smite fights. Can they get in there? Will it be Effort that somehow does it with a flame-powered auto attack? Or will it be, which is more likely, Croco getting through and stealing another one here this game? As maybe, just maybe, that's what they're going to have to lean on, as Faker has done so much damage this game. 11,000 more than the second highest number, which is, of course, Kana. Impressive performance here from the man in the mid lane.
And while the Jinx is online, also went for Maul, so as your main win condition here, not a good place to be.
Oh no, Moonlight Vigil actually coming down as well, as Teddy's just said, no, get out of the way. Effort loses the majority of his health bar just from Teddy. Pressing what, like a Q button? An R button? That was it. Didn't even need to auto him. Liv Sandbox licking their wounds are going to back away. There's an open inhibitor in the mid lane. The Baron's up in 2 minutes time, but T1 shouldn't need it here, as they've just pulled that tempo advantage that we talk about. They've got themselves the Infernal Soul, and now they're looking to just rid the base of any of these turrets and inhibitors.
It's the scenic route to the Soul Atlas, but it's one that gets you there nonetheless. You know, you visit some stores, you take a nice walk, but in the end you get the Soul, and Later than expected, doesn't matter. It's still an incredible amount of power with competition.
Better late than never. Absolutely.
Because now Faker is just going to one-tap people if they're not careful. They can keep this push up. Baron spawns in a minute. You don't need to force her as T1. Right?
Yep.
You have auto shove in topside. It's going to be 2 super stacked there. Mid inhibitor also down. Play it patiently. They have decent vision behind them. Would like a little bit more. But with no teleport available, you're not too afraid either. And you see the damage that comes through now is just not manageable for Liv Sandbox.
Yeah, I think the patience here from T1 definitely warranted based on how the mid to late game transition went for T1. It was a little bit rough, but now they've once again grabbed the reins of this game. Carrier puts up the door. Now, how do T1 break this one open? Well, the first answer is going to be, let's throw as many minions towards this Nexus turret as we possibly can. Thankfully for Liv Sandbox, there's no wave here while they're sent to defend, and they keep that Nexus turret alive by just a sliver. They are barely holding on. We are getting towards one team fight, one victory type scenarios, though. You know, like, I don't know whether Liv Sandbox can win off one of them, but if they barrel down mid lane, there's no inner turret to worry about.
No, normally, in a normal game of League of Legends, you'd hit that 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
But we are a special region, Liz.
Well, Effort may just die. No, has himself the shield. He's going to be okay in the end. My goodness, throws down the redemption for himself as well. As Croco going to suffer a similar fate. As I'd probably write down Faker's POG on
I already
T1 pod card.
Don't worry.
Okay, beautifully done. As that has just given them a Baron. Because now without Thresh, how are you supposed to actually approach? It's the sitting duck, and that is a very comfortable Baron. Of course, I think the condition of the map was also one of the large reasons why that Baron was free, as well as the Infernal Soul that T1 has. So, an extraordinarily firm leading position. There's 3 minutes left on the Elder. I mean, does T1 wait for that one? You're not going to be able to use your Baron if you're going to wait for it, though, because I have a feeling this Baron push should be able to win you the game.
But Baron doesn't guarantee you win fights, though, Atlas. So you need, surely you need Elder. And then if you wait long enough, you can sync up Elder and Baron, and then you can get both, and then you should definitely be fine. If you want to take it safe.
Yeah, if T1 are having flashbacks, is it flashbacks to the Jin Air series, or is it flashbacks to the Nongshim series?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
It's
touche.
Yeah, it's probably a lot of those. And also, let's not forget that T1, in their heyday, and this is of course very, very far away, but they were the most notorious for turning these exact type of situations around.
Yeah.
And I gotta imagine that's also the fear that you have here, because even with the deficit, everyone is basically approaching full items. The power of Liv Sandbox is still something that you need to respect. But you see here the shoving power coming through. I don't know if they can handle it as Sandbox.
Especially when Faker can just dive forward with impunity. Looking for Croco here. He's going to do a fair bit of damage. The Moonfall finally comes out, but it just doesn't do enough damage. Teddy going to get redemption from the side as in goes Fate. But now he's trying to 1v1 against Teddy immediately. He uses the QSS flash to get out of the way. The Showstopper hits the wrong target. And now Prince is in trouble. Ona just diving on top of him. The Gnar onto Ona, but he's got a GA. He's absolutely fine. And Prince, not so much. No fountain for you, unfortunately. And T1, with a snap of their fingers, take down the Nexus at 47 minutes or something in this game and bring themselves to match point in this best of 5.
And that is a back-breaking loss, I think, as well for Liv Sandbox, because you come off a game number 1, and that one, I think you can shake off pretty easily. Made a couple of big mistakes. Draft wasn't great. Level 1, we messed up. It happens. Whatever. You know, it's unfortunate, but we can get past that. But this type of game, the amount of focus that is required to hold on as long as Sandbox did here, that's draining. And T1 walk away here. Yes, they got drained as well, but they walk away with a victory. They're feeling good. They're up 2-0. This game, while not as controlled as game number 1, not even remotely in the same general vicinity of one another, is still, they got it. You know, they got the soul. They lost the Baron every now and then. You know, there's a couple of Drakes you give up. It's not the cleanest game, but you killed the Nexus. And in the best of 5, what more can you ask for?
Well, I mean, that is the ultimate goal. You're absolutely right. And T1, you know, while they did have that, you know, large moment, I'm calling it a moment, but it wasn't.
Several.
It was about 50% of the game where there just wasn't a lot going on. You know, they did let their leads slip away. They weren't able to find the entrances that they were looking for. Of course, their composition a little bit more difficult to navigate in that regard without the engage options that they would have otherwise liked. However, when push came to shove, they were able to get what they wanted, and I think all of it sort of enabled by Faker. You saw that last Baron take. It's the perfect way of playing a late game LeBlanc, right? You remove a player from the enemy team with no possible counterplay.
Don't even have to kill him.
No.
As a carrier and having a good time, you know?
Yeah.
It's important.
Supporting one another, that's exactly the important thing.
Well,
yeah, I'd say, POG, pretty comfortable here. As you can see in the gold difference, it was about, 40 minutes into the game, and T1 were like, all right, we've let them suffer enough. And decided to really put the screws in. But I think, in all seriousness, Live Sandbox held on relatively well around, that mid-game where they were able to try and get us to a point where we were almost talking about possibilities for them. But as you can see, I mean, the damage numbers aren't necessarily awful here for Live Sandbox, but when Faker does 45,000 damage, it sort of skews things.
And for Sandbox, I want to see more, but the problem is I don't know if Sandbox have more Atlas, because I think they've been an incredible team. They've shown us great gameplay, but it has always come from the same source. It's the kind of composition that we saw just now. It feels to me like T1, they've kind of figured them out, and in a best of 5, you need to be able to bring more if you want to bring T1 down.
Yeah, well, we'll see whether they can find more as we get to Game 3 after the break.
타워 줄게, 타워 줄게, 타워 줄게.
나를 탐밀게.
타워침, 타워침.
나
타워 치고 있어.
나 당연히 안 죽어 안 죽어.
나 탈탈게 이거.
링크한테 패치 맞았어.
천천히 들어가지 마.
세트.
세트. 와!
어우.
다 잡았어 정면 다 잡았어.
현장 그만둬라.
왜?
너무 좋아. 형 그냥 가.
그냥 가. 시원하면.
가라.
얘 노플?
노플.
Maybe.
야 잠만 궁원.
오케이. 아 다행이다 나이스.
We're back after T1 versus Leaf Sandbox. Game number 2 and T1 is now at a match point in this playoff round number 1. Leaf Sandbox once again secured their comfort picks, but they didn't get the victory. I do understand why, but you know, there were so many things left to be desired. Looking at two teams' comp, you know, I would like to break it down in terms of the difficulty of executing the theme of the comp. Set, you know, is a champion that can go 50-50 against LeBlanc in lane, and this champion can target CC one specific target, but he is the only one to zone LeBlanc and Kennen out. So Leaf Sandbox had a lot of difficulties dealing with those two massive flank champions on the side of T1, and T1 was the one that realized how to play according to the concept of their draft. Leaf Sandbox had to play around their bottom duo, Jinx and Thresh. Those two champions had to be the ones setting up for plays, but T1's bottom duo were a lot more proactive. And also, T1 was able to see the hyper carry from their marksman pick as well. And because they had Kennen on their side, Leaf Sandbox, they were forced to take Exhaust as their support, which didn't add the amount of power they needed down on the 2v2 fight on the bottom lane. Leaf Sandbox had to either win the top lane by a huge margin or have a lot of tools to counter this Kennen pick on the top lane. Viego is starting to become more like a trap card here in the current meta, but it was Diana, the opposing jungler, which means both of the junglers need a lot of time to come in line. So those kind of a factor didn't really impact much for T1. Now let's take a look at the early play pulled off by T1's bottom duo. Leaf Sandbox at that point in the game had the priority down on the bottom lane. They got the scuttle, but T1, now they made a rotation towards the bottom lane to zone out the opponents. And then with that one caster minion left on the lane, they were able to create a wave the way they wanted. They were able to actually create the minion wave. And then they were able to shove in a massive amount of pushing wave towards the Leaf Sandbox's turret. This was a huge kind of opportunity for T1 to make a turret dive setup. Effort was a little bit greedy using that lantern as a shield. He didn't see that turret dive coming, and right before they ran out of minion T1, they went in for the turret dive, and Jinx, without the lantern, she had no way out. Jinx and Thresh did have lane prio in the early game. They did a great job early on, but the one kind of rotation towards the scuttle was punished so hard by T1's bottom duo and also the rest of the T1 players. After that play, Leaf Sandbox wanted to compensate that loss with the player around the Herald. But you have to keep in mind that Kyria had unsealed spellbook. So Thresh had the priority in terms of the rotation towards the Herald if Kyria didn't have that unsealed spellbook teleport. Braum got to the scene too early and they couldn't pop that Kana's cannon from the get-go. And also the execution wasn't that clean on the side of Leaf Sandbox. Jinx also made her rotation towards the Herald, which means she was investing a lot of her resources towards the top side of the map, but she once again lost that trade, which means now her scaling is delayed even later. Leaf Sandbox did a great job protecting their outer turret on the top lane, but T1's comp started to get online too early and they were able to push that snowball towards the very end of the game. Well, we did have some back and forth fight coming from both of the teams, but still T1 had the control and they kept their hands on the steering wheel. Faker will be the player of the game on LeBlanc from game number 2. This was the best comp for the LeBlanc pop-off, and also she had a fantastic Dragon Soul, and also she started off the game with a solo kill. I think this solo kill was where everything started in favor of T1, and also that re-engage with Faker's teleport was also on point. This could be a very dicey moment for T1, but with that support and cover coming from Faker's TP, Viego was able to get so many kills and started to come online. She almost one-shot that Thresh because Gorilla knows what it feels like getting just one-shot by Faker's LeBlanc. He has all the experience and he can feel the same mood. Faker picked up 9 votes out of 12. The observers decided to spread some love to other laners as well. We're heading into game number 3. This could be a solidifying game for T1 heading into the round 2. But Leaf Sandbox, they do have the potential to turn the things around. So I'm going to throw it back to our casters to get back on the Rift.
Thank you so much, Ji-sun, for the translation of the analyst desk. And it's exactly right. T1 able to settle into a potential 3-0 here if they can take down Liv Sandbox one more time. But now, it is time to knuckle down. It is time for Liv Sandbox to set up for the reverse sweep. That is their dream. That is something that this gentleman right here is looking to crush. His LeBlanc, absolutely fantastic. I think it was a pretty obvious pog vote for the gentleman in that mid lane. Just really able to take control in that late game. Make sure that things were almost impossible for Liv Sandbox, but it was a slow and steady. It was a slow burn game. Number 2, not quite the level of control that T1 had in game number 1. So maybe we'll look to see T1 be a little bit more decisive moving into this 3rd game. There's that man on your screen right there, yet to really come alive on Summoner's Rift here today. Croco, we've had so many good things to say about him throughout the entire season. One Rookie of the Split. Pretty unanimously, I think. He was absolutely fantastic this season. No other rookies really got too close as far as that is concerned, but haven't really seen him here in the playoffs so far.
And for Sandbox, I'm worried, because this reminds me of a position that Sandbox was in previously, and this year, in summer they looked much better in spring, but summer and spring Sandbox have one thing in common, and that is that when the pressure is really on, we've seen both Summit and Croco in particular falter. I think it was us who, I don't know, actually I'm not 100% sure if it was you or me and Veldes who casted the series where Summit and Croco went a combined score of I think like 2 and 10 in the first 10-15 minutes of the game. And that is something that I think has been hard to shake. And while I still firmly stand behind my vote, also went for Croco as Rookie of the Split. One of the unfortunate things of rookies is that they generally are more prone to nerves. It takes some time to get used to these high-pressure situations. And in case of T1, yeah, they also have a fair number of rookies, but how rookie are some of them really, right? Especially now that Teddy is back. That's not
Teddy not very rookie at all, actually. And as we saw in the last game, I mean, that looked like it was prevailing, right?
Yeah, and even a player like Carrier, who's newer, I mean, he's been to quarters at Worlds.
Yeah,
right?
Like I don't think if anyone's saying that, you know, Carrier is this young prodigy rookie player, if they keep saying that, it's just not the case anymore. He's been playing for a long time now, and
he's been really good, and he keeps getting better.
It's only Owner on this team that is really able to stand in that position and has stood there very, very comfortably thus far.
He's been splendid. He hasn't picked up as many POG votes because in both games there was a brighter star, but still played out the skirmishes impeccably, and I would love a Viego first pick here. I think that as Liv Sandbox, if you go for the Diana again, wouldn't surprise me, again, considering this is Sandbox, a team that we know that they love their comfort. They have shown a lack of versatility in some drafts, and I think a Viego first pick here would give them. There we go. Okay. Yeah. There we go. I think this gives me at least hope that we might see a turnaround in this series. Because if this was again the Diana, you give over the Viego to Ona, I'm not feeling good about that.
Well, let's see what T1's response is going to be to said Viego. Certainly a lot still on the board. That Lucian that we were talking about, still going to be there, as that is the Nidalee being considered. We saw Peanut have one heck of a game on this champion in our previous series, and now Owner potentially able to show his hand at the champ.
Nidalee set, maybe?
I don't know whether you need to lock in set this early, but we'll see whether they do decide to do it.
I don't think you necessarily have to.
I like this.
Yeah, me too. Because this also solves the issue that T1 in the game number 2, right? Because let's not forget, even with that series looking relatively good for Liv Sandbox as a whole, even though they weren't able to clinch out the win, T1 still did get a 4K gold lead early on. And they didn't carry out a champion that could push that lead. Fortunately for them, now he's on Leona. And if there is a champion that pushes leads, it's definitely her. Also a champion that's notoriously hard to play when in a disadvantageous position, because you go in very well, but getting out is not your strong suit. Aphelios Thresh would make complete sense here.
Yep.
In terms of power, taking away some of the stronger picks for T1, but that does invite a Varus over, and that's not the most fun of lanes. Varus and Nidalee together, deadly duo.
Yeah, I'm seeing a little bit of poke in the future of T1 here, as we've already had set up. There is no LeBlanc and no Jace available here, which would augment the composition quite effectively. Faker can move towards something like a Zoe if he would like to continue down that path.
No, Atlas. Don't say that. That's too much.
Saying that he could. If we're going to double down on the poke win condition, we can do that. However, poke comps are notorious for being difficult to win with, as the Diana are going to be banned away, which is interesting. Expecting Liv Sandbox here to flex the Viego towards that top side is obviously in T1's mind, as the set going to be banned away.
Do they ban Rumble as well then? I wonder. That's an interesting read if they do go for that, because that is 2 bans invested into a jungler that might just play Viego, but it would be a very good read if Liv Sandbox did want to swap. I've already mentioned not the biggest fan of the flex, and this is setting up for a Gnar pick, right? This is the most telegraphed R4 Gnar that I've ever seen, and I wonder whether Liv Sandbox is going to ban it or say, no, we'll just pick something like the Camille into it. Camille Galio, honestly, wouldn't be the worst to round out this composition. The problem, of course, with the Galio is that there's a lot of matchups you can't really pick it into. So you're going to be reliant on T1 showing their mid laner. If they do leave the Gnar open, okay?
Well, Lucian is going to be banned away, so that Gnar that you were talking about, a likely pickup here. And that is going to come through. I don't think anyone is going to be falling out of their seats or anything like that in surprise.
No.
That particular pick, but let's see how Liv Sandbox round out this composition. We're looking for some solo lanes, and Kennen into Gnar. We've seen this work out for T1 very well so far. Now it's going to be Summit's turn in that position. An effort going to be hovering Susan for a while before he decides on what Fate is going to be playing, and there's the Sylas. I love this. Picking Sylas into Chains of Corruption, Solar Flare, and the Gnar feels pretty good.
One downside of Sylas, of course, is that you can counterpick him. His laning phase is not great, and the Lucian ban in that regard also makes a lot more sense. If you are planning to possibly blind that, then yeah, playing Sylas into Lucian is a very unpleasant experience, and this is a very different approach from T1, not opting in to play something that punishes the Sylas, but instead still going to have a lot of priority, a lot of control in the lane, especially early when the clockwork wind-up is going to do immense amounts of damage. Fate wanting to get out of that lane as soon as humanly possible. Does give the T1 comp a lot more longevity, and you know, now there's 2 modes. You can either go in or you can look for team fights, set them up nicely, and then use carry-out Kana as a ball delivery system. Liv Sandbox comp, extremely explosive, and liking the pivot that they show us here.
Yeah, actually, most of me is thinking that I like Liv Sandbox comp a little bit more. I feel like T1 has so many different modes with this draft, though, as there is a heck of a lot of poke, there is so much CC. That setup, like you were talking about, certainly going to be there, but sometimes a jack of all trades is not what you need, right? And we'll see whether Liv Sandbox can utilize theirs to a little bit more of an effect here. The Viego we've seen already be just so powerful in this series, but it was in the hands of T1 every time that we've seen it. Now Croco is going to be wielding him.
And something that I'm going to be looking towards here is, I think the setup for Croco is great in all his lanes. They have a nice damage spread as well. They are a composition that is squishy, so you do want to be on even footing or ahead. If you get into the mid to late game, you want to look for the skirmishes, the 2v2s, the 3v3s, because, you know, Orianna and Nidalee, it's not the greatest of combos. ㅅ is fairly gated by his cooldowns. The one thing, though, is that Oner will have basically guaranteed prio on bot and mid, especially in the early game. And the tendency of T1 to play only Takana, I think in this context might be a trap. I would love to see them try and actually utilize that.
Yeah.
Look for some early invades, actually make use of the pressure, and whether or not they're going to do that, especially with T1, is always a question. But in that light, I would love for them to play, because I think if you get this Varus ahead early, it's so hard to play the game as Prince and Effort.
Yeah, especially when you're outranged
Yeah.
this considerably. Something that we have yet to mention so far is the fact that Live Sandbox, you know, they've got melee mid laner, very low range top lane.
Yep.
Aphelios is notorious for not necessarily having the greatest range, Calibrum permitting, of course. And so if they can get into a position where they are in control of the game, they get vision control, they have flanking wards, things like that, Live Sandbox win the game, it's fine, heck yeah.
It's smooth.
They fall behind and it's a disaster. It's awful, feels horrible. You get spears to your face and you're like, stop doing that. I can't do anything about it. It's like that guy standing there holding your forehead and your arms aren't long enough to hit back, you know? It's not a good time.
Vivid imagery. Really enjoy as well that even if you wouldn't speak a word of English, just by the tone, you can hear how bad it really is. if you don't get ahead, you know. And
that's what I rely on. My English not so good.
You speak
however,
Australian. You can't fault you for that.
Yeah, no, it's actually true. We've got like a guy that speaks Australian, a guy that speaks Dutch English over here as well. So
Yes.
it's hard.
Quality Dunglish.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, that's a thing.
Is that a thing?
It is actually a thing. It's what our Prime Minister speaks.
Oh, very nice.
It is very nice. And the early prio here for Teddy and Carrier should, I think, around level 2, 3 really start to come through when you get the ability to actually get these longer trades as Varus, get your Blight stacks up early with that Halo Blades, and then cash in on them as Carrier. Who's in?
Yeah, it does have the Aftershock, and that's what he's going to utilize to buy him some space to get himself out.
As pointed out, though, Oner, he's pathing towards topside. He's not wanting to do anything, and instead his Prince and Effort to take control of this lane early. And I think this is fine, considering how early they find the shove. Should not put Teddy and Carrier in a dangerous position, especially with Croco also being around that bot side. And that's the matchup.
Yeah, this is not a good time. And it's only gotten worse, right, with the Kingslayer nerf as Fate going to dive forward. We can see that the stats for the Sylas very good, but it was a different situation for the Sylas. There's the dissonance, gets the slow into Fate. The clockwork is well and truly winding up, as Faker is not going to bite off more than he can chew. And damn, already this lane is feeling horrible for this Sylas.
Insane. The pressure that Faker is able to have. And there you see Fate trying to look for a short trade. Instead, what he's treated to is Faker getting in so many autos there, and especially with the Orianna, extra damage that you get early, and a really high set of cooldowns in the early game for Fate. Feels horribly. Yeah, your fleet is going to help you a little bit.
Oh, that doesn't help anyone.
Not a lot, no. The sustain doesn't do anything, and the movement speed also didn't help you there, so rough spot.
Yeah, this is it's a difficult lane anyway, right? But it's only gotten worse since the nerfs. It's like, yay, my Q does a little bit more. However, the ability that I used to max first and be very happy about in the Kingslayer is now far less relevant.
Yes. It doesn't feel good. And this is, of course, the price that you pay for blinding Sylas. And if there is a gank, the setup for Croco is amazing. If there is a 2v2 between Oner, Faker, and Croco and Fate, still plenty of power available, right? And the ultimates, I think, on T1 side, 3 amazing ones. I guess you can say that the Gnaw obviously is by far the strongest as Oner.
Oh yeah, in he goes. Carrier's going to get the flash. They're looking for the stun onto Effort. Hook is going to connect though onto the Leona as now Prince trying to get that damage down. The Ignite's ticking, but Carrier does make it far enough away. We were looking at that teleport ward there as Summit not going to come in. It was a little bit too close to the Gnaw at that point in time, but no one going to go down just yet as the piercing arrow lands onto Prince.
I'm really happy that we see Oner pay visit to his bot side, as pointed out. Would love to see them try and get Carrier ahead. Also a good read from Croco, identifying that they might want to look to snowball this bot.
Oh dear. Well, he goes into the mist as now Teddy looks for some autos, gets that Hail of Blades, and that's going to help him out there. As now Summit with a big shove onto Canna up here on the top side of the map. This is what happens, right? Like, this is actually a huge test for Canna. What have we been most critical about for this player? And it's his ability to play more on the weak side without having Owner up here in his pocket. Let's see how he does this game. So far, he's getting shoved in, but, you know, often that is what happens.
You will, yeah.
If just left to your own devices in the early game, Cannon does do quite well in lane.
Also notable, Summit went for the Airy. We've seen a lot of Electrocute Nas today as well. Airy providing you with more immediate poke, but obviously doesn't feel as nice later in the game. Prince also going for Lethal Tempo, not the Conqueror, that's very popular. And I actually think Kana should be fine now, right? Like, if he can get the shove on this next wave and with Owner hovering topside, should be relatively able to, can get it back in. Summit crucially didn't use his teleport. And that to me is a signal that he's forfeiting immediate lane pressure in an attempt to try and really pressure Kana in a 1v1.
That's a big... Nah. And Summit is going to get walloped and has to use the flash to get out of the way of it. Spear will connect.
Ooh.
That's a parting gift if ever I've seen one. Nice work, Owner. Summit gets the information, though.
Well, I bet Summit's happy as Tippy still, so it's not a true disaster.
Yeah.
Flash, obviously unfortunate, and now as Kana, you have the same choice. Do you teleport back to lane for the immediate pressure, or do you allow Summit to set up a nice wave state here? Summit, he's taking his potions, he's feeling healthy, I mean, relatively so, and yeah, both top lanes like, no, I want to look at that bot lane. There might be some wards there, we might get some action.
A possibility, most definitely, is now Teddy. Not much of a wave crashing towards this turret, so he's going to be fine for the moment. Prince and Effort. Effort standing in defensive position, and so everything's going to be totally fine. Both of these bot laners looking like they're pretty comfortable. Of course, Prince going to have a lot more late game power, but Teddy more looking towards the mid game for him to really start getting his work done. These piercing arrows are... It's sort of he's an interesting champion, is the old Varus, because he can stay relevant throughout the entire game if these arrows can continue to land, right? Because getting all of that preparatory poke is going to be very, very beneficial. As Croco already started the work on this Mountain Drake.
That's a sneaky one.
Yeah.
I don't think they know. And that's the benefit, of course, of getting in there early, right? Wonder why the pings went down. Also, don't know if Croco sneaked in over the ward or a trap, or if he was taking the blast cone over. So might have to check for that in the replay. But now, of course, T1 do know. Giving up the first Drake, not the end of the world. But this is looking like a little bit of a better early game that we've seen from the Sandbox. Last times, though, it went wrong at the first Herald. And that is, I think, a trap they need to avoid here. Playing into T1 with an advantage is not a fun experience.
Oh, getting a flash would also be good, as immediately Teddy's going to cleanse. Has to flash, though, because the Flay was in range. He's only got a piercing arrow to throw down, but now no flash for Teddy, no cleanse either, as they're going to be moving towards this first Herald fight. So more good news for Live Sandbox, despite the fact that they did not manage to get the kill.
And yeah, that's Owner being on top side. And they will get Herald for this, I think, without contestation. Faker having to shove in mid, low mana on Fate, no teleport available. Summit might look to contest, but especially with Croco still being on the bot side, that's not happening. And you give up one play. So this is one of those scenarios where I think it's actually T1 that wins out in the trade in the long
kind of
run.
not the end of the world with Owner right in position. So.
The main downside is that if there is now a punish window available where Teddy doesn't have flash and cleanse, and if you can utilize that as Live Sandbox and you keep the Varus on the back foot, the one downside I think of Lethality Varus is that once he falls behind, unless he picks up a couple of kills in mid-game fights, it becomes so hard to feel useless. Because it's fine if you're even on the curve, can be super oppressive if you're ahead of the curve. Is calculated by Owner.
Yep, Croco didn't have Smite, so not able to steal that one away.
And this is also something that, while Croco has paid so much attention to his bot side, and it's paid off as well in terms of getting a lead there, Owner has been much more about utilizing a bit more optimized farming pathing. And yeah, you know, there's pressure on bot side, summoners are forced, but if you don't use that window, and Owner just gets to comfortably farm up to his Mythic, and walking up to any objective in the mid-game against this T1 comp is going to be very hard for Sandbox.
Yeah. Let's see whether they can effectively utilize it, and we'll also see where Shelly is going to park herself. Kind of expecting that one going to head towards the top lane, but that might be recency bias speaking just a little bit with the fact that Canna has had Owner's attention throughout a lot of their more recent games.
This is looking... I wanted it on bot side, and I'm actually seeing own a path, so that makes me happy.
Yeah.
I would really like that. I think that keeping Teddy relevant in this game is going to make you, in a general, feel a lot better. As Shove found now, Teddy needs to deal with his wave. Oh, still so far behind. 20 CS. Oh, this is a scuttle.
Yeah, great hook to come forward here as Carrier is just going to flash onto Prince, but immediately he has the cleanse, takes the lantern as well to get himself back into a better position. The spears and the arrows need to land if they want to set something up, but there is no Drake here. T1 just posturing right now to give Teddy as much space as they can. The rest of Live Sandbox trying to get down towards that bottom lane. Man, Thresh is skinnier than I thought. He got missed by that arrow. Nicely done. That's, yeah, okay, unfortunately, we've got to get back on the treadmill.
One hit.
Helios.
Oh,
and okay.
As well. Well, that's plates. Or it should be at least. Because Kyria, even though he used his flash in what I felt like was a great bluff, I don't know if T1 actually was in a position to turn as fast there. Oh, Faker's coming as well.
Yeah, fish
looking
barrel
dangerous.
Down here. There is a shockwave available.
Double TP available for Sandbox though.
Right now, it's just T1 positioning themselves around here, trying to get as many plates as they can before they unleash the Rift Herald. There's a very deep teleport to come through from the Silas. There's Effort in a bit of trouble. Croco looking for something. Is the shockwave going to come through? But the Heartbreaker is buffered. Croco makes it out. Fate spotted here by Ona. That's great news for T1. As Fate not even able to get himself out of the way of the spear. As Ona walking further forward than even Effort was expecting. As now the fight is going to break out. Solar Flare goes completely wide. They do get the flash out. So Croco has to use everything. Is now Prince down to 350. And T1 still closing in. The war of attrition from this poke composition working beautifully right now. And if Ona had missed maybe 2 more of these spears, this could have been a very different situation as Effort almost just barely getting missed by that last spear. As that piercing arrow is dangerous as Fate has found Faker. There's the shockwave, but it's more of a hula hoop here for Fate, unfortunately.
Yeah, Faker making really good use of the face rush there, showing why that movement speed is so highly valued. In general, on Orianna, just walks out of it, and you will always have to delay. And hats off to Ona. Not just for hitting the spears, because while that is very obviously a big part of what won them that, but also the presence of mind, recognizing that there is a chance that they might get flanked, right? Because if Fate goes unnoticed there, and they don't actually know that he's there, taking down, maybe he gets a Leona ultimate, and then the solar flag comes down on a Teddy that I think at that point did have summoners available. You blow them up, you turn that into some bot side pressure, they don't get to put down Herald, get more gold on Teddy, and you're feeling peachy. But instead, T1, even without picking up a single kill, picked up many plates. Now Teddy's on his mythic, so is Ona, and I don't think that now you can walk up to this objective as Live Sandbox. Summit, very fed, has TP available as well, but the rest of his team just not in the greatest of spots.
Yeah, this is really dangerous. Thresh nowhere near Prince right now, but we'll be able to regroup. T1 haven't started off the Drake just yet. There's a control ward in the back of the pit. Faker just getting to work on this mid lane, making sure that they have all of their lanes in order. Ducks in a row here for T1. And the bottom lane, once again, going to be pushed further forward. It's on its last legs down there. One last plate to go down potentially for T1, who currently have about a 1,000 gold lead. Now they're looking for their first Drake as well.
The real question is, do you just never rotate Kana so Fate can't steal his ultimate? just push. Just make sure Summit doesn't TP, okay?
Yeah.
Just that's your only job. We'll win. We can't have Fate jump in and Maganar all of us, because outside of the Maganar, the Leona ult obviously the best one. The ult from Teddy can be really nice, but obviously we know how hard Chains of Corruption can be to land. We've seen that skill shot miss very often.
Yes.
It is, I think, one of our most often missed ones. Maybe up to with Ash Arrows, but Ash Arrows, it always feels very non-committal, right? And it's
I feel like the history of Chains of Corruption was when Varus first came out, it felt like it was impossible to land for like actually everyone. It was so funny. I remember praising, like, I think it was Yellow Pete back in the day. It's like, wow, he landed it. Speaking of landed it, goodbye, Mr. Cannon. Can't even get the stuns off. As Carrier turns up, that Solar Flare is going to connect, and that is a very dead Lightning Rat. And hey, now the top lane out of turret, likely to fall down as well. Plate's not going to be there as even more spears landing. Ona really earning his paycheck today.
And hey, if your side lanes are either conditional in case they're not, or not that great at setting up for Italy, that's fine. Just take your Leona, you know? It's set up, take it and go. Leona just walks everywhere that Owner does. It's the combo there. It is a clean setup then to land the spear, take the damage, and teleport coming through here now from both Faker and Kana, really going all in on the second Herald. Don't think it's that important of an objective, but might get ourselves a fight here, Atlas.
Yeah, they're still looking for it. Teddy's walking over Vision. Moving towards this one as Shirley is going to reset. Teddy going to get some vision here of the rest of Liv Sandbox backing away. Phalanx going to be put into line once again. T1 will be able to collect this one. Fate goes and grabs himself that Solar Flare. Now the siege is going to begin, but counter siege certainly an option here for T1, and their line wave clear absolutely fantastic with the Teddy piercing arrows. And Faker's just chilling out here on the top side of the map, trying to get to this Orianna critical mass stage. 10 CS a minute pretty comfortably at this point in time.
And for Liv Sandbox, this is starting to feel eerily similar to game number 2. And I think unlike game number 2, this T1 comp, they can dive you very easily, but they don't even need to dive, and that's a terrifying thing. As we saw there, they're more than willing to play it patient. And if you play it patient and you keep control of your flanks and of the vision around you, you can do this with relatively little opportunity, because the Liv Sandbox comp, once a fight has started, I think they're amazing, right? The mobility that's available, the big teamfight ultimates, fresh, provides both peel as well as aggressive plays. Silas and Viego are like these type of messy skirmishers par excellence. The problem is, if you don't get into that position, like how do you actually start a fight? Like, you're great at skirmishing, but if this happens,
yeah, you're dead.
You're dead. And then if you're not able to set the fight, you're kind of relying on T1, but T1, if they hit a skill shot on someone, that someone generally will be dead.
Oh, it's another Solar Flare to come out as Carrier goes on a wild ride, hit by a hook in the middle of it. He's able to flash himself out to safety. But that was exciting.
That was a lot.
Whoa. Thank you, KT Roster, I guess. I don't know. That was very exciting. As Canna here on the bottom side, Croco getting speared and arrowed. And this is the danger of this composition, right? T1 can just set up the shooting gallery wherever they feel appropriate, especially with the amount of map control that they have. And we mentioned earlier just how dangerous it is to give a comp like this map control, as that's a big old Gnar into the wall. The cannon in trouble is going to have to flash out of the way of the spear. He takes so much damage. Canna wants more, and he's going to pick it up with the hyper proc. The turret isn't going to be able to come any further forward, and Shirley is going to get her work done. Hook not going to be avoided here by Teddy, who finds the Chains of Corruption onto Effort. But he uses his cleanse, gets himself out of the way, and Effort going to hold on to his flash. So nicely done there by the Thresh. Still, it's going to be difficult. Now finds the Flay onto Owner, as Shirley also finds the headbutt onto this inhibitor turret.
And that's 30 seconds to the Drake. It's Cloudsoul, of course it is. You know, we had to get one.
Oh,
the Dream.
So excited.
You wanna, you know, maybe some
more Chains of
people.
Corruption. You can,
yeah,
it's non-committal CC, right? You have that one off cooldown as often as possible. You just keep pressing that R button. Beautiful, love it.
We in the LCK have learned to truly appreciate the Cloudsouls for what they're worth, and I think a lot of other regions, they don't really appreciate what they have. As just, you don't need to do this as T1, and this is again feeling very similar to what we see Teddy do here, where he just says, "No, Fresh, I'm gonna take you down."
오, 지렸다 형.
Bussin'. Fantastic work there by Canna. Owner showing his appreciation, as well as the second Drake will go over to T1 quite nicely.
And now, as Liv Sandbox, you have the skirmish composition that's playing from relatively far behind. Spikes are getting hit, Kana's getting more tanky, gets the wit's end, makes it more of a nuisance in the side lane, allows him to charge up that passive a little bit quicker. Owner sitting on the Night Harvester, which is an incredible amount of damage. Teddy is getting closer and closer towards that 2-item spike as well. It's rough. I think you're reliant as Liv Sandbox on mispositions, and thus far T1 haven't really shown a lot of those. As here as well, like this teleport comes in, it's very telegraphed, but you can't move into your jungle. There's no vision, there's no way for you as Liv Sandbox to reliably place check this, because if you walk into unwatered territory, into a poke comp that's scary enough, but it's also a not Orianna Leona comp.
Yeah, so much CC. The pick potential here is just ridiculous. His effort walks over the control ward, Croco in position, the rest of Liv Sandbox. They're all rotating together. Going to be difficult for T1 to get that collapse back. But you saw it was just Teddy left in that mid lane. And even though he didn't have his cleanse, he still had his flash available. And his wave clear certainly going to be dangerous. As Fate says, no, I want to be able to hit you with your own ultimate. See whether he can actually find it, as now Teddy is just trying to, walk this one out as best he can. Escaping from the Sylas is going to be difficult as he lands the chains over the wall. Goodbye, Mr. Varus. Right as I was saying that Varus was safe, he gets killed, so I need to apologize now for the caster curse.
He was in fact not safe.
Yeah, big sorry.
That's okay. It felt maybe to Teddy for a moment there. Unfortunately, the chase potential of Sylas obviously great. Also Teddy flashing in the line, not ideal, and this is the kind of flank you need.
Yeah, Liv Sandbox looking for even more here. Teddy's still dead for 10 seconds at the summit. Has found 2 with his slicing Maelstrom. Faker immediately taken down. Carrier is just running away as best he can. The Baron's been alive for 50 seconds, and Liv Sandbox are trying to end that now as they move over to the pit.
The exact situation that you need to avoid as T1. The kill on Teddy is one thing, that's fine, that's not the end of the world, but then why are you sieging in mid without control of your vision? Right, they walk in very deep, get greedy for some damage on the mid lane turret, and now they're gonna lose the Baron this early on.
Yeah, it's an absolute disaster. Teddy really desperately wanting to hold on to his flash, and unfortunately he uses it and dies anyway. So a bit of a shame, as we're going to check this one out as well, as they looked for the pick onto Prince, but unfortunately the counter engage was too good.
Yeah, you can't. You're not allowed to be that far up, especially without your full team into the composition that Liv Sandbox had. You know, this is the one way that they get back into this game, and yes, you still have a golden lead as T1, you still have an incredible team fight, but now you're playing into a Baron, which Liv Sandbox should be able to turn into, at the very least, a turret or 2 extra, get themselves from a major gold disadvantage into even footing, or in a more positive sense, if they're able to get a kill or 2 as well, an advantage. And it's not like they're skilled poorly, you know, I think their team can be clunky at times, but
I mean, they get outranged, right? But
that's mostly
if they are able to get any sort of map control, then you can mitigate that by getting yourself some good flanks and closing in on this team. And we've seen, you know, T1 fall to the hands of powerful Sylases before. Of course, Gory comes to mind in that 71-minute game or whatever it was.
Yep. And Fate is getting more and more fed.
Yeah.
Mobility, and we've gone from a game where Fate was getting bullied by Faker. Oh, look at the Sylas. He's 1 auto away from getting taken down. And here we are, because this is what the Sylas does. When the gameplay isn't clean of your opponents and you're able to find isolated targets to duel, you're in a great spot. Kana, you can't get caught here. Drake is coming up soon.
Yeah, he's teleporting in vision, and it is going to get cancelled. Goodbye, Kana. He's taken out once again. Another overextension here for T1. 46 seconds on the Drake. They can give up a lone Cloud Drake, but they want to hold on to that win condition, or potential win condition, of the Cloud Soul.
And it's still an option, right?
Earlier, yeah.
The real problem is with kind of dying there, he also doesn't get to teleport into the fight immediately, right? So it is a high-risk, low-reward play, because even if you do get out, you don't have your teleport available. And now, contest on this Drake looking basically impossible. And yeah, with stopwatch second as well, like Owner's damage not going to be as threatening as some of the Peanut comes to mind type of build that we've seen with the Horizon Focus, where it's really all about those spears. This is still a bit more of a hybrid build, where you're also able to jump in deep. And spikes being hit are bigger for T1. They still have a gold lead. But this is, to me, something that scares me, because this is the first time that Liv Sandbox have actually looked like Liv Sandbox in this series, where they're able to find these decisive type of plays, and this is exactly what you need in the game 3. I mean, it's obvious, because like if you don't do this, you lose the game. But it's also, you know, it's a pivot in the draft and a pivot in the gameplay. Yeah, too far up, very greedy, overextension. You know their bot side as well. Not a lot to say about that one.
Nope. And Summit invests the ult. Absolutely worth it there just to make sure that he gets the stun. Easy peasy. Now, T1, can they regroup? Can they sort themselves out? Because wrestling for vision control is the aim of the game at this point, as they are bleeding gold lead up against Liv Sandbox. Even on Drakes now. As T1 still pushing past the river, still trying to get pressure into the jungle. And you can see Ona with a 30 CS lead. Certainly feeling like he has Croco's number right now, but this composition isn't just a straight up composition, right? You don't want to just straight up fight your opponents. You want to land all that poke and then lock down the picks with all the CC.
Need to land at least a little, or have someone that you can just hunt it to 0. But look at the builds. That's actually really hard. Stopwatch available for Fate. Sonya's available for Summit. Prince going for the very defensive Aphelios build, which means that especially with Thresh, with Locket as well, a lot of this aggressive damage is kind of mitigated from T1, right? So blowing someone up hunt to 0 seems a lot less likely, and this is where I think the T1 composition, much more than in a lot of other T1 comps that we've seen, still allows them to pull through. Because what they have is a comp that can still win off of a single good series of team fight ultimates, and that I think is something that's always going to give you comfort no matter the game state. Hit a Mega Gnar into an Ori ball, and you're good. As he does land it, doesn't mean anything though.
Nope, gets onto Carrier. Just says stay still for a little while, and Carrier says okay. And he does, and then he moves away. So it's going to be fine, but sometimes he's got to hijack something. And Fate level 16, that hijack is going to be back off cooldown once again, so he can steal a different ultimate. And there are a lot of different options available, as Fate going to be taking this Rift Scuttler, and there's nothing that T1 can do about it.
Is there anything more romantic, Atlas, than going down 0-2 and still winning the series?
Reverse sweeps, I think, are the most romantic.
Right?
Absolutely.
It is on theme.
Oh, yeah.
For Sandbox. And if you're, you know, maybe you're not the biggest LCK aficionado, you're just like, let's see. Let's check out some playoffs. Liv Sandbox are a team that got the nickname of Romantic. They're the romantics of the LCK due to their, I want to say, hot and cold approach to gameplay.
Yes, it's like watching a drama.
It is.
You never know what to expect from Liv Sandbox, but it's certainly always very exciting and enthralling.
It gets your heart pumping.
Yeah, it gets you going. I don't know what that quote's from, but it's an older movie, and I don't know.
Well, it's also in you know, it's a sample used in the Kanye West and Jay-Z song. Yeah, it's really nice. As I wonder whether we're going to see anything happen before this Drake. Don't think it should be. But giving over soul point to either of these two teams, if you pick it up as Liv Sandbox, you make your life so much easier, because then you can start forcing T1 to run into you, even though they might not necessarily want to before they've landed that poke.
Yeah, lots of extra movement speed available as well to keep Prince safe. Things like that certainly going to be very, very important. Liv Sandbox moving towards getting some vision control. You can see T1 have reasserted some dominance in that fashion over the last little while, especially to the north of the map. But now Liv Sandbox going to move in there and get rid of it where they can. The Baron has respawned, is now Canna looking for Summit, but the teleport will come forward. That's a flash, and Summit just immediately goes golden, buys time for Fate to get on in here. And Canna, I don't know what that was, but it did not work.
Not sure either. And again, he gets caught in the side. And again, it is just before a major objective comes up. T1, not really the type of composition where you can use this pressure that's found on bot side to turn it into an objective take. And that leads you to a situation where now you don't get anything. You might have to invest teleports to contest an objective that you might still not get, because Kana is going to have to teleport in basically immediately and then still charge his Negabar. Huge wave being shoved in on bot side as well. Faker needs to catch that, which takes away from some of the pressure. You have to set up this objective, and T1, gold lead, negligible.
Yeah, it's almost gone. And Liv Sandbox really, I feel like as far as team fights are concerned, they're looking like they're in a great position. Not a lot of flanking wards or anything like that, so Summit's not going to be able to surprise T1 at this point in time. But Liv Sandbox can just move straight over to this Baron and say, all right, you can have your second Cloud Drake. We'll just take the Baron buff. And T1 say that they do not want that. This is in fact the trade that they like making, is Carrier going to get a bit of a face check onto Fate. who's going to Gnar him into the wall. Solar Flare defensively as the chains will connect onto the Gnar as the Shockwave does come forward as well. Faker is going to try and zone them, and they do so by making sure that Fate uses his Zhonyas. T1 able to disengage, but Liv Sandbox take this as an invitation to get right on top of the Baron. T1 indecisive right now. The Baron going down relatively slowly as Summit looking for his flank. There's the flash in. The exhaust is going to come down though as now Summit's in trouble. He's going to fall immediately as Carrier goes golden. Chains of Corruption connecting, but there's not that much damage on T1 side. Prince forced out of there, has some short-range weaponry at the moment. And it's a 4v4. Prince is the win condition as there's the Gnar. And Canna may have done it. They lock down Effort. As now right into the back line they go as they trade 1-for-1. It's supports now that have been taken out. Carrier and Effort have both fallen down.
Got a nasty peek and gone back with a fresh health bar. And I don't think either team can go for Baron here, but they're now moving towards the objective. Kana coming in with the flank.
Yeah, immediate teleport to come through here as Fate looks for the chains, but only finds a hijack onto Teddy. Now Kana with absolutely 0 Mega Bar shows himself to the rest of Liv Sandbox. The 3 could collapse on him. He does not have his flash available, but can hop some walls if you would like to, and does do that. As we now see T1 trying to work out what they want to do, as it looks like Liv Sandbox will just walk over and take Soul Point.
And it's the threat that's available, right? Yes, you can approach her as T1, but if you get hit by Fate, if you get too close to Prince, you just die, right? You just outright lose the game. That might lose you the Baron, and that snowballs from there. And yeah, T1, they're playing with a gold lead, but it doesn't feel that way, Atlas, as Kana is about to hit Mini. Wonder whether they were going to look for an imminent collapse. Not going to be the case. And man, tough fight here, as the immediate exhaust is so big here. Everyone playing really nicely around Summit, expecting him to come from that angle. Double stopwatch used well. Fate not really able to get a lot done. Yeah. But the same can be said for Kana, right? Like, it takes Kana very long to actually get into relevant range. Also trying to preemptively go for the Gnar into the wall on Prince taking that objective. But now you're a Phelios and they're funneling into you in the choke point. So you don't want to do that.
Good about that.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. And then the threat of 100 to 0ing that Liv Sandbox had is too much. Soul Point is taken, but
oh! Whew. Okay, Teddy. Very close, but Summit might just be able to take him down here. Just needs one more Q, and that is good by Varus. In the meantime, T1 are taking on the Baron. Let's see whether they can actually lock this one up. They're going to need to try and burst it. Lantern Ride is going to be taken here as T1 will be able to secure the Baron, but can they get out alive? Two-man Shockwave comes on through. Summit also has to use his Zhonyas, as now Owner is also going to go into his, but unfortunately it's not going to be enough as Liv Sandbox tidy up. It's Canna and Carrier left with a Baron, but at least Liv Sandbox aren't going to be able to take one for themselves, but they might be able to break open the base off this one. It's 32.5 minutes into this game, and Prince does a heck of a lot of damage.
Yeah, I think they might be able to get in it here. Teddy's going to be up soon, but he alone is not enough to hold this up, and even with the Baron wave, you're not going to have enough time. I wonder if Liv Sandbox, do you want to try and flip, or do you want to just try and go for the end? It's a big risk, not one they're willing to take, which I think is the right call. Composition can do fine later on as well, but I'm sure they were considering it there because there was still a window of opportunity without Faker's Shockwave. Much less threat available, and I think it's a trade you take as T1, but it's not an amazing one.
Yeah. Not the greatest. Certainly was a bit of a Hail Mary as this. Like, imagine if Prince just gets one shot here. You know, if that W-empowered Q is going to connect there from Teddy. Could have been a very different story. Could have been just a really clean take. But unfortunately, Teddy overextends for the attempted kill. And it is going to be a punishment there from Summit. As we're going to check here on the bottom side of the map. Canna, with his Baron buff, is going to get jumped on by Croco, but is able to hop his way out of there. He's going to be okay. Also has Sterix and his Wit's End, plus the Warden's Mail that's now chilling. So he should be okay.
Renderman's now done, and Lack of Vision prevent Liv Sandbox from chasing that much further. Yeah, that's the negative Baron Power play. It's been a recurring theme this series. And as Liv Sandbox, you're feeling good, right? You're able to get these more scrappy fights as Teddy gets killed, and then you get into a 2v2 or 3v3. And as long as you can keep that going, your composition has an incredible amount of power. And it's not like it's just that, right? T1 needs players so respectful because Fade at this point is an absolute menace. The late game of Silas, when he is level 18, when he has a couple of items free in this case, when he has a Dark Seal that's stacking, the quality of ultimates available for Team 1. It's terrifying.
Yeah, I'd agree. And it's also, as far as ease of execution, this composition works extremely well, as there's the Solar Flare, looking for some of these ultimates, as Croco's going to flash his way out. Canna looking for the Narbar, but he's going to get denied. Prince with the Q from his Severum going to be able to deter the Gnar from running any further forward.
Lens used, and that might be a big one. Solar Flare as well, but should be up. All the Cloud Drakes mean that cooldown timers in this game, not really a thing, Atlas. We have them for every single fight.
Yeah.
Maybe Cloud Souls are the reason we get more action, not less.
Yeah, Azael was right all along, I tell you. As the teleports come through here from T1, Summit trying to turn this possibility, as he's immediately going to get exhausted, as Faker not going to get taken down here. Summit absolutely is, as that might have been an overly aggressive play, as now Liv Sandbox setting up. Chain's not going to connect at all, as now Prince going to take a Lantern. Chains of Corruption connect, as that's a big Gnar from Fate, but where's the follow-up? He does find his Zonya's button. Shockwave comes through and they get rid of the Silas. Croco trying to get out of there as Owners dived on forward. Goodbye, Mr. Aphelios. That's not enough years quite available here for the Liv Sandbox AD carry, and now T1 pushing 4 strong down the bottom lane.
And it looks like both teams are looking for the Ant. Croco's very low. Kanna's going to try and defend. I don't think they can do this. If you have full health bar as Viego there, maybe. But Kanna is fed. He's at the ready.
Oh, not able to stop it. Man, that could have been big. But it is going to be the inhibitor taken one more time here from T1.
They're looking for it.
Yeah, we're going to go for the end. 5 members of T1 pushing on forward. 25 seconds on Fate, 22 on Prince. Is now effort desperately trying to keep these turrets alive, but T1, they are one-track focused. They want this 3-0. Hook is going to connect onto Faker, but it's not going to be enough. And T1, despite everything that happened in the mid to later game, they are still able to make that decisive play and take down Liv Sandbox 3-0. in this best of 5.
And I think it was the messiest game out of the 3, but it's still one that in the end was enough. And whew, that's also one where I think as T1, okay, if that's the first game in the series, this might have been
you'd be
very different.
You'd be feeling a little bit worse there, but you can imagine that there are going to be some sighs of relief here from T1. Some misplays, some whoopsies, but ultimately they found the right trigger to pull, and you know, Summit going in, sort of not finding the right moment, a bit of a disconnect there
and
in Liv Sandbox.
Kanna both had 2 plays that almost lost them the game, as well as 3 plays that won them the game.
Yeah.
It was a very up and down, it was romantic.
I feel like the romance was coming from T1 this time around,
yeah,
with the amount of ups and downs and hots and colds that we were getting throughout this one. As, yes, T1, congratulations. They are going to be moving forward into the second round of the playoffs, facing off against one of Game1 Kia or, of course, Gen G for that rematch. Remember, Gen G were able to take down T1 3-0 in the spring semifinals.
Oh my.
Possibly some revenge available, depending on who Game1 Kia chooses as their opposition.
And I think it's actually hard. Because you can look at this series in multiple ways. You can look at this as T1, Teddy's back, they get the 3-0, they stomp Liv Sandbox, and I think those assumptions are fine. But then you also see game number 2, that inactivity that had plagued T1 for quite a while, showing up a little bit there. Game number 3, not the cleanest of executions as well, but then same can be said for Nongshim, right? So I think it's actually, especially in this split of the LCK, where there's been so many question marks about which team ranks where at which point.
Yeah, no, I agree. And in the last matchup up against Game1 Kia, T1 were actually able to take that victory as well. So a difficult question on either side. I think that you could argue that Afrika was, you know, the lower tier opponent.
Yeah.
And then Nongshim able to take them down, but it was a 3-1 T1 with the 3-0 over Liv Sandbox. How do you weigh this? I think it's an unenviable situation for Game1 Kia. But look, we'll have to find out, as it's going to be about 30 minutes from now that ㅣ2021 Kia are going to make that choice, and all across all of the LCK social media, you will be able to find out exactly who is going to be taking part in our semi-finals. Either matchup is super hype, though. It's going to be
so
really,
good.
really exciting.
It's so good. Because all the teams that we have left now, I think the Afrika dropping out, not a surprise. Liv Sandbox, if you told me 3 weeks ago, would have been less likely, but in the last couple of weeks, you could feel the pressure getting to them. Of course, not the last we're going to see of them, as they will be playing in the regional qualifier. But T1, Nongshim, Gen.G, and ㅣ2021 Kia, all teams where you can make very, very well-structured, well-reasoned arguments about their power level, come to completely different conclusions, every single one of them, and still be right. Like, it's really cool. It's so close between these teams.
And I think it comes down to personal preference in the end. Fortunately, if you're a ㅣ2021 Kia fan, they get the first choice. I think it might be that Kesper Cup final rematch. I think, personally, I think that the choice of Nongshim might come through. It might seem like a bit of a surprise, but if you have a look at their performance up against Afrika, looked like there were things that they could potentially exploit. T1 not necessarily looking like that, a little bit more enigmatic, and certainly much better in best of fives historically than a very untested Nongshim Red Force moving towards this finals run.
And then I ask you, are you happy with that as T1? Because now you're up against Gen.G, who...
No, you're absolutely not happy about that whatsoever. No, no, no. That's why if I was ㅣ2021, I would not choose them, because, you know, even...
then you're just like, you take care of them, Gen.G. And like, we know we can dispatch of Gen.G. This is known. We're ㅣ2021 Kia. We never have any issue with them. You take care of T1. We don't want to.
Regardless, if you want to win the LCK, you have to beat one of them, or whoever manages to take them down in those semifinals. So I don't think that you need to worry about it too much. The road to the final is all you really need to think about, and the fact is you have to beat everyone that is going to get there in order to make it. So it's exciting to see. I'm kind of hoping for a bit of that T1 Gen.G rematch, right? I could imagine that T1's probably looking forward to a little bit of revenge, and if Gen.G could do it again, that would be very impressive, as we are going to get into some of the highlights from this series. And this pick from T1 certainly setting them up in the early game, but it was not clean. The last two games, not the first one, immaculate, absolutely beautiful. The last two, a little bit messy.
Yeah, this is what I was talking about, because this is such a clean play from Kana, right? Like using the hyper, using the movement speed, that's all great. But then he also gets caught inside twice, and then Teddy just get randomly taken down. Faker had an okay game, but it wasn't amazing either. Hit a couple of good shock blasts, but this overextension, I think, is the one thing that as T1 can't have that happen in a semi, because this is a type of momentum-shattering, turning play that they played around so well for like the first part of the game, and then from that point on, in the end, still able to clinch it back. Liv Sandbox just not quite there in terms of how they played some of these team fights out. Still a valiant effort, but not enough in the end.
No, not quite. A little bit unfortunate for T1 here that Kana wasn't able to catch Prince mid-Lantern Ride, but actually very good of him to wait a little while. This was dangerous, to say the least. Faker's Shockwave certainly helping out, buying space with Summit's Zhonya's having to be used as well. However, only a couple of Barons survived, as this was it. This was the moment where Summit goes in, thinking that everyone's going to be there in time, but unfortunately they are just out of sync.
It's just a really nice collapse from T1, identifying that one member is not in place at the right time.
And imagine if that Nah has the slicing. It's done. As we have a listen to T1 winning.
야, 내가 집 탈 생각.
나려 탈타.
내가 집 갈게. 이거 끝낼만 하다. 걔네 녹으면 해볼만 해 보여.
리다리 힐 분배 잘해봐.
나머지 먼저 뛰어서 이거 쳐도 돼.
만화 잘 아껴봐.
끝낼만 해 이거.
Communicating the base race possibility, making sure that
Italy keep healing, keep healing, keep healing.
야, 나를 탈타줘 할만해.
Not quite able to stop the back.
바로
타줘.
일단 캐넨 10초, 캐넨 10초.
야, 이번에 끝내야 돼.
쳐야 돼. 타워만.
쳐야 돼. 비고 약해.
타워.
비고 약해. 비고
타워 해.
타워. 비고 약해.
타워.
벌려.
타워. 벌려줘 타워 좀 벌려. 타워.
이거
You see Owner clutching his hands there.
쳐야 돼.
오케이.
아, 타워 쳐도 돼 그냥.
아 GG 수고했다 얘들아.
나 탈진이 없어서.
타워 쳐도 됐어. 타워 치면 끝났어.
That went from okay, super high like tense shot calling to just devolving into everyone screaming tower.
Yeah, tower. As Summit did a lot of damage this game, but you saw a lot of that load was shared here by T1. Prince also not being able to find his entries, and I think a lot of what we were talking about when it came to range disadvantage really sort of played a part there, but we saw the Live Sandbox were able to find ways to mitigate that throughout the mid to late game, but just a little bit of a disconnect in that last team fight. Really unfortunate for Live Sandbox, because that could have been the start of their dream runners. Let's check out the player of the game. I'm actually quite interested in who this is going to be. It's going to be Canna, who picks it up on the Nah.
Even with the two less than optimal plays, we got caught inside. This was a really hard game because it was won and lost in team fights, right? So you can make an argument for Faker as well. I think the votes will be relatively split. But
I think Owner as well played out the early game fantastic.
Owner wasn't masterful in the early game. But like I said, yeah, he had some plays that might have lost him the game, but also the play that was definitely big in securing it, getting the Mega Gnar here, making sure that they were able to reliably lock down Prince, because if Ophidios stays alive here, game might be over.
Yeah.
Yep, that makes sense. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
We are very confused about who's going to get it. In fact, everyone outside of Teddy picked up a vote in this particular one, so that's why it was perhaps a little bit confusing. But, ladies and gentlemen, it is interview time, so let's throw it over to Jisun.
Thank you very much, guys. This is Jisun with the POG interview of the Summer Split Playoff Round 1 Match 2. The winner T1, the POGs will be Teddy, Faker, and Canna. How are you feeling, guys?
3대0으로
It's a clean, 3-0 win. It's a relief, and we're working hard. What about you, Faker?
네, 이제 3대0으로 저희가 이겨서
It was a 3-0 victory, so I'm pretty much satisfied with the result, and we will prepare for the upcoming match. It's been a while since we played best of 5, so it was definitely a little bit hard, but I'm glad that we were able to end it pretty quick, and I didn't really get exhausted. Thanks for the quick 3-0 victory. Faker, did you expect this kind of a landslide 3-0 victory coming? Well, after winning the game number 1, I had some good feelings. And also in the middle of the series, I kind of had the confidence. Teddy, welcome back. It's been 47 days since we saw you here in the LCK, and you got the POG on the game. The first game you came back to the LCK. Very fast adaptation on a big stage. Do you also think that this kind of experience does really help you a lot? All I had in my mind is to kill the opponent. It's a bummer that I didn't really get many kills, I think I have to do better in the next best of 5. And Teddy, yeah, we could see the fiery eye from you, a lot more aggressive than before. You did spend some time on the bench, so we're curious about this kind of roster swap, or maybe what kind of goal did you have for today's series?
괜찮게 된 것 같은데.
I think it went all okay. Everything was good. Good answer from Teddy. Well, T1 dropped the final game of the regular split. So what kind of feedback went back and forth after going back to the drawing board? That day, we kind of had some bad energy, and the game didn't go well as well. So we did our best to, feel a lot better, so I slept well, and I took care of my own health. Sleeping well is also a very important factor. Performing on stage. And in game number 1, you guys actually played Ashe into Kalista. Tell us about this matchup. We are Ashe Leona, and it was Kalista Alistar we were playing against. So we wanted to just play out the lane safely, but with the kill bonus in the level 1. After that, I was able to play a very comfortable lane. And you kind of shouted out carry, a jinx here in the LCK. But we could feel the confidence from you, and you lifted the carry phrase curse. I mean, after saying that, I actually felt a little bit scared of the jinx. So I'll be a little bit more cautious.
좀 질문도 저희가
Game number
해봐야 될것
2,
같습니다.
Faker. We would like to ask you about your LeBlanc, your signature pick, the pick that killed me so many times. Your LeBlanc has an incredible win rate here in the LCK, and we saw a little bit of a smile on your face after that LeBlanc lock-in. Are you satisfied with your performance? I don't think I was smiling at that moment, but overall, previous to the last series, we did step up a little bit, but still, this is not our best form. I think we have to improve ourselves. And game 2, I was able to play a lot more proactively, but I wasn't proactive or aggressive enough, so the game got extended a little bit. So I think I have to work on that issue as well. Kana, we are having a lot of Nar versus Canada matchup on the top lane. Could you break down the champion matchup starting from the laning phase till the team fight stage?
라인전 단계에서는
In the laning phase,
캐넨이
Kennen
조금 더 사거리가 길어가지고
does have a bit of a slight range advantage, so he can really play
네, 잘 하면 될 것 같아요.
very well
그리고 후반
until
가면은
level 6 in the later game.
사이드 주도권은 나르 쪽에
Nar has the side lane priority, but I think both champions have pros and cons.
아무래도 역시 본인이 좀 잘해서.
I guess you want all the matchup because you played better?
네, 캐넨을
Yeah,
잘해서
kind of. I think
이겼잖아요.
I played Kennen better.
그죠, 3대0이니까.
You did because they secured a 3-0 victory. And speaking of game 3, T1 did have a priority, but the game was a little bit extended.
일단 2세트 그 3세트 때는
Game 3, well,
중간에 저희가 잘렸을 때
we got picked
빼고는 불리한 적이
time to
없다고
time,
판단을
but we never
했었고,
thought we were falling behind.
집중력도 저희가
And
높다
also,
보니까
we have a very high concentration in the mid to the late game, so we were not worried at all. And that pick onto Kennen was the nail in the coffin to pick up the Game 3 victory. Well, you guys were rotating towards Kennen, and the reaction from you guys was so on point. What kind of call went back and forth? The opponents were very far away, so we wanted to, you know, make him use his skills before we head into the teamfight stage. And I kept in mind what kind of skill will actually target me. And T1 wrapped up the playoffs round number 1 victoriously, and Tom and Kia will be selecting their round 2 opponent in about 30 minutes. Who do you guys prefer, Tom and Kia or Genji?
저는 뭐
Well, me?
팀원의 방향성에 따라
I just follow the direction of my teammates. Kana, what about you?
둘 다 잘하는
Both are
팀이라고
strong.
생각하는데요.
I think both are strong teams. Both are strong teams.
네?
What?
그 말하면 되나요?
Me? Can I continue?
네, 두 팀 다
I
잘하는
think two teams
팀이라고
are both
생각하는데요.
very strong, very
언제
talented.
한번 담원이
But
결승에서 T1을 만나고 싶다라는
I think Tom and Kia did say in the previous interview, like long time ago, they wanted to play against T1 at finals. So I would like to face Genji in the semis. What about you, Faker? You always try to pick on Kana a little bit on stage. Do you have any other answer about the round 2 opponent? I always say I don't mind too much about our own opponent. Focusing on ourselves is the most important key, and I'm sure Tama will not pick us. Very clear answer by Faker. And lastly, what's your mindset for the next round of the playoffs?
다전제 경기 다음
Best of 5 series. We're gonna have another one. We're gonna prepare as hard as we can. What about you, Faker? We finally are at playoffs. We have learned a lot in the previous series, and we kind of have a long way to go as well. You know, there are some rooms to be improved, so I hope we can come back with improved performance this year. I really need to take a flight, you know, so I will win the next match. And this will be the end of the interview from Teddy, Faker, Kana, and I'm gonna pass it back to our casters. Thank you.
Thank you so much, G-Sun, as per usual, for the interview translation. Great to hear from all three of the T1 players making a bit of fun of one another right there. I like the amount of extended dodging of having to answer the question of who you want to face. I love that it's always asked, even though everyone knows that it's going to try and be avoided as best as possible. And there's absolutely no surprise that Faker did it the best, because he's done it for so many years. It's just constantly had to field
Never have to
answer.
actually answer that question.
Yeah, I think we have Play of the Day available now as well. So let's check out what we thought the best moment of today's games were, and it is Canna's Cannon. This was one heck of an ultimate. It's just the perfect cannon flank angle as well. Just feels so good.
Nuguri will be proud.
He would.
Yeah, he would be proud. Wrapping his skin and getting 4 people in that ultimate was also basically what you can argue it was Teddy's level.
Teddy's
1.
like killing Fate whilst collecting the Eye of the Herald as well.
Yeah. No, this was a game, one that gave us some expectations for the series. I don't think those were actually cashed in on. However, it was still 3-0. It was still a dominant victory. Liv Sandbox never actually found any footing, and I do think that even in that final game, we saw a little bit of what I would like to describe as like round 1 Samakana, where he gets caught, he doesn't get really get going. But we saw 2 things. One, added the 3rd champion to champ people in the cannon, which did great, especially in game number 1. Yep. And secondly, he doesn't need as much attention anymore. And that, I think, with Teddy coming back as well, really shifts how I view this T1. I think this T1 is looking a lot better than they were in the last couple of weeks. Because the addition of Teddy, especially if he stays in the form that he was today, in combination with a lack of rigidity in just playing around Karma, to me makes T1 a much more multifaceted threat.
No, I agree. I also think that Liv Sandbox, relatively untested in best of 5s. Yep. They were able to make it towards playoffs at the very beginning of their career in the LCK, but unfortunately fell out of the running for quite a few seasons in a row, so haven't really found too many opportunities to stretch their best of 5 legs. They will be able to do it once again, though, I believe in the first round of our World's Gauntlet, which will be up against Humble Life Esports of all teams, which is going to be very, very interesting. In fact, those teams are locked, as it's going to be Hanwha and Liv Sandbox that will likely have the least amount of points and will therefore be playing first to try and get that gauntlet run. However, we're not finished with the playoffs just yet. Worlds has already been taken by ㅣ2021 Kia, and who is going to be joining them is going to be the question, as we do have playoffs coming up in only a few days' time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching today, and we'll see you when we get to round 2 of the playoffs. Oh, and also, before you guys go, we do have confirmation that ㅣ2021 Kia has chosen Nongshim Red Force as well. It was a false goodbye, and we will make sure we get it out on social media as well. But if your friend just walked away from the TV or something like that, make sure you let them know that it's going to be ㅣ2021 Kia taking on Nongshim and Genji taking on T1. It's the dream. Thank you so much for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.
Teddy! Yeah, Teddy.
Standing on the edge of this big love, I'm not looking down.